Man,
Perfect.
man, that
timing.
come on different, man.
Ladies and
Sorry,
gentlemen,
guys.
welcome to the show. This is the Round Table Rumble. I am the Saint, Ron Emerson, and we're going to go around the room in a clockwise fashion, and we're just going to talk all forms, facets, and things of professional wrestling. So, Mr. Clark, you are next.
Hey, what's up? I'm Tom Clark here. Tom Clark's Main Event and Tom Clark's 6M podcast, name, rank, and serial number. Been podcasting since 2014. Huge fan of the business, of course. Huge fan of all things geek culture, pop culture, and been in the business for several years now as well. So there you go.
All right. I am Christopher Burton, the People's Podcaster, one half of the hottest, and I dare say the hottest podcast this side of the Mississippi, the Straight Up Wrestling Show, where we don't have any particular time. We come on, you just catch us when you catch us, and we're talking any and everything wrestling from WWE, all the majors, all to the indie shows. So, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the one, the only, the UK's voice of professional wrestling, representing Bucker Bomb Entertainment and the TRWC. Ladies and gentlemen, from Luton, England, I give you the one Walsh Meister, Luke Anthony Walsh. Boom.
I have no idea how I'm going to follow that up.
Good luck. Good luck.
I'm just gonna put it out there. Hey guys, I'm Scott Larson from #Truth. I also do another podcast with my best friend. It's the SmackDown Digicast. You guys want to check that out? Slapdown Digicast, and that's it. After Luke over here, I don't think I could beat that. So, what's up, Harry?
Yo, what's going on, Scott? I'm HBT, Harry Bernard Taylor, here with my man Christopher Burton, the People's Podcaster. We do the Straight Up Wrestling Show, and I'm just glad to be here. We've been doing this thing for 7 months now, right, Chris?
Yeah,
so,
not even a year. Not even a year.
So we just now basically getting into it, and like Chris said, we cover everything from WWE, AEW. Sometimes, we were covering some Ring of Honor. And we probably start covering a few other big ones every now and then, and we go to a lot of indie shows around the area. So that's something that we plan on continuing doing, and we will continue to make hot podcasts and be on podcasts like these with our guys Ron and Scott Larson. And new friends, Luke, and what's the other guy? I can't see your name.
Tom. That's Tom Clark.
Tom. Sorry about that. I had to do this on my phone, guys, because for some reason my tablet I couldn't pull up the link. I was trying that for a couple minutes. Chris, like, hurry up, HBG, hurry up, Harry, whatever. It's crazy.
Chris said you'd be late for your own funeral. I'm just saying.
Yeah, whatever, man. It had nothing to do with that. I couldn't get that link, man. It wouldn't show up on my iPad. I don't know why. Just
there you go. We're glad to have you on here.
So,
all right.
Randomly on Tuesdays, no sporadic. This is going to be a sporadic thing because we're all so busy. We all do so many different things. But we wanted to try to throw one of these out there, see what kind of response we get, and see what happens with the different hits. So we're going to just talk in general about professional wrestling. Now, Mr. Clark, I need to bring something up to you. I had a guest on my show over the weekend who is involved with a company that you're also involved with.
Okay.
So do you know about Heroes to Legends Ministries?
I do, actually, yeah.
All right. So you're with High Velocity Wrestling out of North Carolina.
Yes.
What part of North Carolina is that based out of?
We were based out of Hendersonville, and the future location is to be determined.
Okay.
It is under wraps. We're just saying Western North Carolina. So
very cool, man. So I know Heroes to Legends because of Randy Wayne.
Yes.
And Cole Maccabee is the promoter for Pro Wrestling Union. I had him on over the weekend. Man, y'all want an interview? Scott, you've interviewed him 17,000 times. But
I'm interviewing him this Friday.
well, yeah. And
17,001.
we put out a huge announcement that J.D. Drake, the blue collar bad, is going to be appearing for Pro Wrestling Union coming up in May at Mayhem. So that's pretty cool. But, just guys, the state of professional wrestling today, in my book, is chaos. And I would love to hear where you guys feel it's lacking and where it's succeeding. So let's go ahead and get this table kicked off.
Alrighty, man.
Who's up? Am I up? Okay, so
talk there. So whoever.
JD Drake was actually a former HVW champion. He got his start in high velocity wrestling. We're very proud of the guy. He's doing great things now. Worked very hard to get it, kids, for sure. It's not an easy road to hoe out there, no doubt about it. I love where pro wrestling is right now. People talk about the Attitude Era is greatest of all time. I dispute that. I'm a Crockett kid, so I grew up in the 80s, and for my money, the territory days are where it's at. But that's my own take, right? I love the amount of competition that's out there right now, the amount of companies that are attempting to do it right. I wish Ring of Honor was still with us, and hopefully they'll come back firing WrestleMania weekend and kill it like they always had before. I love that there's so many places for the guys and gals to work and to make a good paycheck and make a good steady living. And at the end of the day, this stuff's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fun for fans, for guys like us, for girls like us who love watching this stuff, who eat, breathe, and sleep it all the time. I mean, this is supposed to be fun, and we make it not fun. The companies have a hand in that too, right? But we make things personal. We go at each other. We make things silly, and there's no sense in it. I mean, we've forgotten when we were kids, a lot of us growing up watching this, that it was so much fun. And I feel like if people can get over themselves a little bit and get back to that, then I think they will enjoy the product a whole lot easier, because it is just pro wrestling, folks. That's all it is. But I do love it. And as far as the current state of the business, WWE is on top of the mountain for as long as they're going to be there. I mean, that's a whole other show, right? But, I got thoughts on that, and I make them known quite often. But that company has an audience, 44,000 people at the Rumble. Someone likes what they're doing.
Yes.
So guys like us can sit back and go, and we do all the time. But again, 44,000 people disagreed with us that weekend. So it is what it is. But again, I love where it's at. I love the number of companies. I hope there's more on the horizon. I hope that there's, even a company like GCW, which I know very little about, if they can rise above this ECW nonsense they seem to be stuck on, in my opinion, I think they can make a real play for something serious. We'll see what happens. But I'm a fan of this stuff, man.
Well, I basically can't disagree. Wrestling is definitely on the uprise. I mean, it's picking up a lot of casual fans, with the addition of AEW, who were more or less burned out with WWE and the loyalists there, because they were doing one thing or another, and they were like, I'm done. And then AEW comes along, and it's the hottest thing since sliced bread, man. And, then you have the unfortunate decimation, as I'm going to just call it, decimation of ROH. I still don't understand what happened there. I mean, they were really with one of the biggest TV products or producers in the world, and then they just folded like a wet piece of paper. And then you got those who follow New Japan. So you got a lot of different options to follow if you don't like one or the other, or if you just like me, like wrestling in general. You just want to watch wrestling and try to keep up with it all, but sometimes it's so much, it's hard to keep up with it, especially if you're adding in the mix of independent wrestling and all the independent promotions in that too. So you got like I dare say 50 to 60 different organizations you're trying to keep up with at a time, and God who knows how many different superstars. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's chaotic. The business isn't chaotic, the fans are chaotic. The fans, because at the end of the day, we're podcasters. Some of us are in the business, but we make it chaotic because we, as people, are brand loyal to what we truly love. And we think Coke is better than Pepsi, vice versa, or whatever the case may be. And that's when the clash and the chaotic stuff happens from the fans.
Interesting. In my opinion, I think there has never been a greater class divide in professional wrestling today than there's ever been before. What we are seeing from World Wrestling Entertainment and All Elite Wrestling is as wide, if not a greater depth between content, narrative structure, creative, original ideas, and in-ring performance. It's as big of a gap as what we saw towards the end of the Attitude Era between WCW and the WWF. However, professional wrestling, certainly in the post-pandemic era, has seen a rise and a boom period like it has never encountered before. Game Changer have really changed the game. Their working relationships with All Elite Wrestling, the promotion of Nick Gage to the star that he has worked his damnedest to get himself the platform he deserves, even though it took himself a pizza cutter and a little pizza promotion. But that's to one side. However, I think there has been so much enthusiasm to the talent that is not only coming from the United States, but also from Japan and from the United Kingdom. Progress Wrestling has never been hotter than ever before. We've got Cara Noir, you got Ilya Dragunov, who is still the NXT UK
Yes.
Rest in peace to Walter. We will never call you Gunther, ever. But what we are seeing in the divide between AEW and WWE, in the middle, we are seeing this resurgence of indie promotions being able to resource talent and really give them the push and the work that they desperately need to be able to showcase their efforts to then push them up further than they'll ever reach before. So in summary, I think as much as what we are seeing is a boom period, I do think there is an element where a rising tide of pro wrestling is lifting everybody except WWE, who believe they are sinking to new depths that they've even reached before.
Interesting take, Mr. Larson.
Gosh, that's all of y'all. I agree with every one of you at some point or another. I mean, we could all, just pick apart, but I'm like Tom. I like all wrestling. I'll even dare say it. There's some backyard shows that I'll even watch. I'll just be honest. If a kid is actually trying to get into the business and do the right, now there's right steps to get into, the big time. I'm not saying, go to a backyard show and that's where you should start. No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if a kid, his first opportunity is at a backyard show, look at, I always make the point that, Jeff, the Hardy Boys started on a trampoline in their backyard and they sold tickets. I mean, they actually sold tickets back then and look where they're at, I don't look down on people from where they've started, and I'm Tom too. I'm from the old school. I like the old territory days. I wish they would bring some of that back. We've all said it at one time or another, bring a little bit of that territory stuff back. As far as WWE and AEW, I'm going to be honest. I quit watching them right shortly after AEW came on the scene. And it wasn't because I didn't like what they were doing. It's just I got so involved in my podcast and so involved in independent wrestling. If you stay in independence and there, like I said, you could throw a rock, and Tom alluded to this, there's a lot of companies coming up, and I love that. I love that all the opportunities that people are given. Okay. And that keeps me busy. because I want to get all them guys. I'm probably like Tom, like you guys, Harry and Chris, you guys actually go out to the shows and get these guys on there. And I love that. That's why I tune in every time you guys go out. You guys go to a show and immediately you're carrying your stuff with you. And I mean, you even come to HWA where I go all the time, and everybody looks at me. I've had people look at me and go, "Man, they're on your territory." No, they're not. They're podcasters. Let them do what they do, man. I'm happy for them. Why would I get mad at that? So, but wrestling, I don't think wrestling's in a bad state at all. I think it's in a very good state. I think it's too good right now. In my opinion, there's too many opportunities out there. And sometimes we need to have, slow it down just a little bit and make sure that if you're a wrestler and you're getting into the game, that's really what you want to do. You know what I'm saying? I say it all the time on my podcast. I don't want you coming in, disrupting a locker room and doing stupid things out in the ring to either hurt yourself or hurt the other guy who might be trying to, become a superstar. I want you to make sure that you're safe during the whole thing. And I want you to want, because that's what the fans want. That's what me as a fan, I want to go in and see a great show no matter where I'm at. You know what I'm saying? And I'll push anybody who wants to work. And that's the big key. Train, work, do what they need to do, and keep getting better. And I love shows like, HVW, HWA, any other show. I wish some of them would work together. And that's the final point I'm going to make. And then we'll move on to Harry. I wish some of these, we even talked about it before. I would love to see 4 or 5 shows come together and make a small territory in themselves. Have a championship belt that would move from each show, and have the fans, if you live within a 2-hour drive of each show, man, imagine the fandom that would go around. Imagine the money that would go around. I'm just saying, but I digress, and I'm going to pass it on to Harry.
All right, man. Great statements by everybody so far, and I agree. And there's a few things that I disagree with. As far as Ron starting this conversation off and talking about how wrestling is chaotic, I agree 100%. It's chaotic. I mean, it is total chaos. And I stopped watching wrestling back in maybe around 2001. I think I pretty much just cut it off completely. Just pretty much stayed involved with it as far as as far as the big stars and seeing what's going on. I kept in touch with it. Kept in touch with it by Chris, finding out who the champions is and all that. But it's chaos. I come back in it, chaos. And we started off, we was doing the WWE shows and the AEW shows, watching that. And I was covering Ring of Honor a little bit. And then we, we got into where we started covering indie shows, going to different indie shows. And I saw the same case. And when it boils down to it, it's chaos in these indie shows too. It might not be chaos in every single promotion, but when it boils down to it, as a whole, it's chaos. As a whole, it's chaos as far as what I've seen so far in the Carolinas. So, and Chris made a point. Chris said it's basically us, and that was the first thing I did attack one time on our podcast. I talked about that, how it's chaos, how the fans bring the chaos. Because in another podcast that we did earlier this week, Ron and Scott, y'all heard it. And I talked about that. I talked about the chaos in wrestling. It just seemed like everybody is disoriented, man. And everybody gets invested in wrestlers now. They're not invested in the wrestling product. Back in the days, during the territory days, which my man Tom, he's talking about territories. I love the territories. That's what I love, and that's what I would love to see again, to get all this thing corrected. But when we look at it as a whole, and we look at the fans, like I said, Chris, and I said, and Scott and Ron, you've heard this. Fans are invested in the wrestler now, and if that certain wrestler, it's so much talent, which Chris and I was talking about today. It's so much talent now, they don't know what to do when they get a wrestler, and a wrestler can get hot. Like let's look at somebody like Hook. He's hot right now, but I tell you what. 3-4 months down the road, he goes on a losing streak. These fans that's deeply invested in him, they are going to be pissed off. and they're gonna say, "Look what Tony Khan has done to my wrestler, have done to my wrestler," and those fans might run over to WWE. So that is what's happened. And the chaos from there, it has went to the promoters, the bookers. They don't know how to book. They don't know how to book it because of the chaos coming from the fans. So it's coming from both sides. And then you have somebody like Vince. Vince is he's getting outside bookers, people that don't know anything about wrestling, coming in to book these matches, book storylines. And then Tony Khan over there in AEW, he was just a fan. And not saying that that there's not a fan out here who can hook up great matches or come up with storylines, but he's kind of off on it. And AEW lately, it has been falling off. It was on TBS lately. Now it's under 1 million viewers, people watching it. Put it that way. Sorry, couldn't get the word out, but it's under 1 million watching it every week. I mean. They might have jumped back up this week because I didn't check, but I know they went under 1 million, so they back to where they was when they was on TNT. So it's chaos from both sides. So and Chris, we're not going to mention the name, but we heard about some serious chaos at one of the locals this week. I mean,
that's a whole nother type of chaos, though.
It's a whole other topic, man. But I'm just trying to say. It's not just in the big promotions.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And it's definitely chaos when you have six wrestling promotions within a 2-hour radius of each other, 200-mile radius of each other, 6 to 8 promotions. It's actually more than six that we have covered. But there's more that we haven't covered that's in our zone. That's in our zone that we could actually be out there covering. And so it's so many wrestling promotions. It's like Scott was saying, if they come together, you can have the fans, and they can say, okay, this champion is say we're in the Carolinas, okay? They could be the Carolinas champion, heavyweight champion, or whatever, and they can go to each one of them. But so many of these guys, they do not want to work with each other, and they opening up their own little thing, and that causes chaos too.
So to kind of put a little bit of emphasis on a couple of items here. First off, Mr. Burton.
Yes.
Pepsi over Coke. Let's start there. No, I had to throw it. I had to throw that. But reality is, Harry, I agree with you to an extent, and Scott and everybody that said, making one conglomerate independent would work out. One thing, the problem there is going to be personal financial greed. That's why you don't see that. And I will say from my experience, take my experience with a grain of salt, because 19 is when I first started watching or being involved in indie wrestling. The only traveling title I have seen here in the Carolinas that even goes into North Carolina and possibly Georgia, it's been defended in Texas and Florida's Pro Wrestling Union. That is the one and only I know of that travels. I don't know of anybody else that does it. But Randy Wayne defended it in Florida and Texas, if I'm not mistaken. If anybody's out there, correct me if I'm wrong. And I have no problem being corrected if I'm wrong. But
you're right. Right. I can tell you you're right.
But as far as I know, everybody makes the right points. Everybody's hitting on the right notes, but you notice the subtle differences between us. It's all the same book. It's all the same line. It's how we read it and interpret it that makes it different. And that's why this, I believe, is going to be a huge medium for information, as well as ways for people to conceptualize different facets of professional wrestling. And I think that's an excellent thing. Now, in my opinion, the chaos mainly stems from the fan. I don't know if you guys ever touch on Twitter, but wrestling Twitter is about the most toxic thing on this planet. It is horrible, but the reality is it's also funny, and there is occasionally a couple of tidbits of information in there. One of which I shared earlier. I don't necessarily want to get into it because I don't want to talk about everybody's most hated rumor mill. So I would rather avoid that cancer if I could.
Fair enough.
I'd like to have a good time. I don't want to talk about that piece of trash. So
who are we talking about? Just say it. Just say it.
Meltzer. Dave Meltzer.
Dave Meltzer.
Right. Can I have a second?
Sure.
Dave Meltzer is the longest tenured, most successful, most well paid. I mean, of everybody in this chat and everybody I've talked to in the past since I've been doing this since 2010, he's the guy. I'm not taking up for him. I'm not saying he's right about everything. Far from it. But I think he deserves his flowers when he should get them, because there's so many guys that want to be where he is, and they're just playing catch up. I'm not defending him. Does everything he says true? No, it's not.
One thing that I like about Meltzer, he has contacts. Nobody can say he doesn't. The man has contacts.
Yes,
Business. And we all wish we had those contacts. I mean, we'd all die for those contacts. Give 5 years of our lives for those contacts. But the one thing that I don't like about, and I'm not going to say it about Meltzer, I'm going to say dirt sheets. I don't like dirt sheets because I don't want to know as a fan what's going to happen. I have my own opinions. I have what I want to see happen. I play couch booker at home. I know who I want to see fight. I don't want to be told 3-4 days before the show, hey, this might happen. This is probably going to happen because I saw this guy. That's the only thing I don't like about, and it's not just Dave Meltzer. It's about anybody who does dirt sheets.
But see, that's the funny thing though, because
that's the only thing that I have against Dave. As far as Dave probably works 3 times harder than all 6 of us put together. Okay. So, I'm just going to say it. To not like him, that's fine. That's an opinion. I don't have an opinion of Dave. I have an opinion about the dirt sheets. I don't believe in them at all.
The reason I brought this up was I want you to think about these numbers, and everybody here can count. I'm fairly confident pretty well.
Right.
So the numbers in here that are alarming and concerning is to say that in 20 years of TNA wrestling on television, there have been less 5-star matches than in AEW's 2.5 years. That is, to me, that's kind of a crapshoot, and it leads me more on the lanes of, okay, the meme I made straight up says, tell me Dave Meltzer's on the payroll without telling me he's on the payroll. That was the meme I made.
Well, because don't we all do that? All as podcasters
Hold on.
This is a 5-star. This is we all have an opinion. That's an opinion.
Yeah, I get that. And for the most part, everybody does their
it's just higher paid opinion.
This is true, but you can't logically, it's hard for anybody who's a wrestling fan to repetitively crap on one product over the others. I
disagree.
You disagree?
Yeah, I disagree. This is all subjective. Everything that Meltzer says you may hate and Chris may love. And it doesn't mean that Chris and Dave are right and that you're wrong. But in your view, you're right. In their view, they're right. It's all subjective.
Exactly.
If you want to hate on Dave, not you, brother, but anybody. If anybody wants to hate on Dave because, well, he 5-star this, that, I get it. That's subjective. But to hate on a guy for, and I don't know what the number is, what the percentages are. Maybe he's 40, 60 on accuracy. Who knows what it is. But to hate on that part and say, well, he's not reporting. Go back and look at his track record. How much stuff has he said that's actually happened versus, well, I don't like his 5. So yeah, but that's the subjective part. That's his opinion. Doesn't mean he's right.
I think my 2 cents on this is this, as I haven't really said much on this, is that Dave Meltzer is one of the most experienced sports journalists in the game today. The amount of research, the amount of time he has invested over the last 25, 30 years, and not just wrestling, but in mixed martial arts and other areas as well, is nothing short of astonishing. And whether we agree with him or not, we have to always give him credit that he is as good a trusted news source than any other mainstream media outlet can ever produce. And he could walk into NBC News tomorrow or CNN and hand in his CV and he'll be employed as a senior editor. He is that good. But he has that CV to back up his research and back up his resume.
Yeah. No, that is true. That is true. I mean, but like Dave, he like us, and it's been stated a million different ways by us. He gives his opinion of how he feels about what's going on in the business, and from his viewpoint, he may say, Brock Lesnar, even though Brock's resume speaks for itself as a great athlete and competitor, he may come out and say Brock Lesnar is trash compared to this green rookie who's only been in the ring 5 minutes of training. And if he says
that's what Tom was saying. It's all opinion. It all comes back to opinion.
It is all opinion, and we're going to catch up on some comments too.
You put it up on the screen.
Oh, there's a bunch of them.
There's a bunch.
Put up what rest.
Yeah, Scott. Not trying to cut you off, but as far as Dave Messer, I have nothing but respect for him. I mean, there are some things I think he said, and especially lately, that's probably pretty, it's pretty off the wall. But as far as what he's done in this business, and as far as where he's at in this business, you have to give him his due. That's the way I look at it.
Wow.
So.
Can I address the comment? I'm sorry. Can I address the comment? Bill, what's up? I'm Tom.
Wow.
Bill, this is no disrespect to you or to anyone that agrees with you. Do you bag on an NBA journalist because he's never played the game professionally? If the answer is no, then you shouldn't bag on Dave for never being a wrestling promoter. Yeah. We're not saying he's an expert. We're saying he's a journalist. You don't have to have a championship ring on your finger to write about the game. So why does he have to have been Vince McMahon to write about the business? That's just my take.
I have to come in.
That's logical.
Bill Hazelwood's coming at it from a guy who's in the business like you are.
I respect that. But we're not saying that Dave's an expert.
No. I don't agree with Dave being an expert either. He's more of an opinion person, but he has a lot of contacts, and that's what and his contacts will tell him when people are coming in or maybe what's going to happen at the next WrestleMania. He probably already knows, all the matches at WrestleMania by now, probably.
Bill Hazelwood's been in the professional wrestling business for 21 years at this point.
Right. I know that. I've talked to Bill times. Me and Bill have talked many times. Bill and me, he has taught me a lot. Him and David Cody both. He knows. He's been on my show plenty of times.
Well, there's your answer. He dogs on them too. But I mean, that's just.
I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to get mad because. Said it's all opinion. It's all
opinion. Not
gymnastics. As far as what Michael King, and I love Michael King too, but as far as wrestling is not gymnastics, there's no grading criteria. Everybody watches wrestling and says this guy's good, this guy's not, this guy's my favorite, this guy's not. Every sport. Yeah. I'm a baseball fan, and every Chicago Cubs sucks. Why? Because I'm a Milwaukee Brewer fan. Hello. You know what I'm saying?
That makes sense.
You poor guy. You should be a Yankee, man. You should be a Yankee.
I want to add as well, as somebody who's a full-time journalist by trade now, and somebody who
that's right.
Qualification as a journalist, is that I can understand what you're saying about hating the dirt sheet, Scott, and feeling that it is a spoiler feed. But I also understand what Tom is saying about sports journalists are. They can't be full experts if they haven't played that and the whole argument. What I say is 2 points to this. Number one, when it comes to like to any sort of kind of sports journalism, there's that level of excitement of what if. There's whether it is wrestling, whether it is NBA or the NFL, of once you hear a story, you hear a friend at work about the water cooler moment of, did you hear this person's going to go here? Did you hear this might happen? That might happen. Now that's obviously a report of something, and obviously whether it is from the Observer or whether that is from
Ringside
or Fightful or any other, like whether they are right or wrong. That's the excitement. Now, obviously, they could be feeding false news to swerve us and completely shock us entirely. I mean, let's not forget Money in the Bank 2021. Did anybody report Cena was in town? Absolutely not, because that's the element of surprise.
When out of WrestleMania a few years back, nobody knew that was coming.
Exactly. Luke, I want to say that what you just said, that last sentence, that is a lost art now.
Yeah.
Because we are in the information age.
That's why that's the part of the dirt sheets I don't like. That's what kills me. Because as a fan, I want to be shocked like that. I want to shake my daughter's arm off when the Hardy Boys come out, and I didn't expect them to come out.
Scott, but I'll tell you this. Scott, I'll tell you this. Sometimes it's not even the dirt sheets. Sometimes it's the boys in the back who just happen to see somebody they might have grew up on, and they forget their performance and become a fan, and they hit that phone, and then next thing you know, they be like, send, and they meant to send it, and they send it to somebody who sends it out.
Yeah,
and then it's over.
And that's why we say the territory days were better, because we didn't have social media back then. Word of mouth is how the champions got, that's how Ric Flair became Ric Flair, was by word of mouth through the territories, through the South. People, watching them on TV. There was only 3 channels, when I'm going to tell my age here, but 3-4 channels on the TV, and you had to put the antenna up to a certain place in order to get it, because it's just out of your, viewing view, and you're trying to get it in. I mean, I remember those days, and that was fun for me. That was the fan in me. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I just want to quickly just draw back to my second point that I had, sort of referring to what Thomas said, that within sports journalism, we are there as employed people of the public. Essentially, we give the voice to those who have to know this information. And I have heard that time and time again. I was just at a soccer match just tonight, and you do get so much anger and so much frustration pointed at these journalists who, maybe have not kicked a ball professionally in their entire life, nor intend to. But at the end of the day, we're doing a job. What we are doing is providing information, and I think it's a sacred art and a sacred gift within this world of a technological revolution and this information age. Fake news is a thing altogether. But when you take the journalism to its bare bones and the job that journalism does, whatever context, whatever category it is, it should be defended at every point. And I think anyone who sort of criticizes it should not be making any statement whatsoever, and should be just appreciate that we have it in the first place.
Right.
Well, people
say, basically.
Go ahead. But yeah, it's people. People will say that about journalists. People will say that about a fan or whatever. Oh, you can't criticize this person. It happens in all kinds of different sports. You never, you're not a coach, whatever. Let them be the experts. They're the ones who's out here doing it. So you just reporting. You just talking about something that you see. But none of us, nobody can say that Dave Meltzer couldn't promote wrestling. Nobody could say that somebody who's a journalist, just because they don't know anything about professional wrestling, that they can't go and start a wrestling promotion and be the biggest thing out here. Who knows? I've seen people go into coaching. I've seen people go into coaching, knock it out the box the first time. I've seen it. Examples in the NBA, examples in NFL. So nobody can actually say that. So you can't really say that just because somebody is looking from the sidelines that they can't be an expert. They might not be an expert and have the experience, hands-on experience, but it's not saying that what they see and the kind of knowledge that they have gained and watching, that they cannot lay it down once they get in there and actually have to do it.
Well, I'm just going to say this real quick. Now, I learned a long time ago when I first got into this indie game and I started learning about indies. Guys, I didn't even know there was an indie wrestling until like 6 years ago. I thought that everybody just, went to WWE and trained and went on the show, and everybody back in the day just went to that show and trained and got on TV. I didn't know anything about indies till like 5 years ago, okay? And I was amazed, and when I found out, I was watching all these fans, and that's what makes me a fan, and I'm still a fan. I might have a podcast, I might interview wrestlers, but on top of everything, I'm a fan. I know everything that goes on backstage at HWA most of the time, but they'll come to me and say, Scott, let me tell you, no, don't. I want to be shocked and surprised. I sit in the front. You guys have been to the show. I'm a fan when I go there. I want to get to HVW and all these other shows that I haven't been to, because of my illness. I can't. But let me get to the point real quick that I was trying to make. There have been times when fans will sit out there and commentate what's going on in the ring, just sitting there watching, going, oh my God, he's doing this, he's doing that. I would rather hear that guy on a mic than somebody who's been in professional wrestling for 20 years who's just saying, okay, that's a great suplex. That is an awesome hit. When you got a fan over here that's excited and going through the roof, that's why Joey Styles has always been one of my favorite commentators. That man could commentate a cup of coffee in the morning, and you'd want to drink that coffee even if you hated coffee. You know what I'm saying? Because he's a fan.
True story. Harry, I don't know if you remember this. We went to a SCW indie event back in 90 something.
Okay.
And it was in Greer, South Carolina.
Yes.
Okay.
And and that was the first time I ever truly had a taste of indie wrestling. And
I'm laughing at Bill Hazelwood's thing, but go ahead.
And me and Harry, we didn't know nobody on the card or nothing. We didn't know who was who or nothing. We were just like, okay, these guys out here wrestling, whatever. So we literally were up in the bleachers commentating and making up names for these guys. We were like, Big John Johnson up here with a clothesline to short Matt Bilanowski, and we had the fans cracking up.
And I would have loved to have been sitting by you when you were doing that because I would have had a blast.
Yeah, we had the fans.
Michael
You
King
remember
just
that?
made a good point.
What do you say?
King made a great point.
What do you say?
Finding the balance between promoting to sell tickets and not promoting to sell surprise is tricky at best.
Yeah,
Another
but
man with a good mind for the business.
I was going with what he said before that. It was about the NFL coaches. Both of the NFL coaches in the Super Bowl never played.
They weren't players. Yeah, that's true.
Weren't NFL players. Yes. I mean, it's no need for me to go back to.
But again, I'm going to say this, and I know Bill Hazelwood has his opinion. I still respect the guys for all the work they put in and all the research, like all the people that he knows, and the man's put in work. There's not a person out there who hasn't put in the work. If you're hated, there's a reason why you're hated, why you got haters. You know what I'm saying? You put in the work.
There's no doubt about it. And look, like I say, I agreed with him on one point a couple months back where he said all wrestling is sports entertainment and has been for the last 65 years. That's not entirely wrong. And I was like, oh my God, hell's going to freeze over because I just agreed with Dave Meltzer. It scared me. But, truth be told, my main issue with him is how it feels to be more one-sided than anything. And that's just me. I try to, if I like something on WWE, I talk about it. If I like something on AEW, I talk about it. If I don't like it on either one, I rag on it. And you guys in here all know that I have got absolutely zero problems because I give zero anything.
Nobody on this panel that will agree with me on the best wrestler in WWE. You guys know who.
We're done. I'm going to mute. Stop.
Oh my God. Good
Lord. So I got to get this. I got to get this out here. Do you want to know why we're all in here tonight? This post right here is from my brother. My brother is the one who called me and said, dude, a combination show was awesome. So
Rich.
Because of him, I started the Roundtable Rumble. Nice, and here we go. So thank you, my brother Richie.
and I've got to do this for Bill Hazelwood, who is and has always said he is the fastest mouth in the South. Bill. That's
Bill. All right, Tom, if you've never seen Bill Hazelwood or if you've never seen, met, or talked with Bill Hazelwood, sir.
Great guy. It's great guy.
Great guy. The wealth of information is coming out of him. But
I mean, I don't know how many people in this roundtable knew Bill Cody when he was alive.
Dave Cody.
Dave Cody. I said Bill. No. I was thinking Bill Hazelwood. Dave Cody. Me and him disagreed on so many things, but the one thing that was cool about it was we would go back and forth, and then I'd see him, at a show, and we'd sit there and drink soda and enjoy a wrestling show together talking. I mean, you don't have to agree to hate them. Just because you disagree don't mean you have to hate a person. I just want to say that I love Bill Hazelwood. Me and him don't agree on a lot of things either, but I love the guy, and I respect him for, like you said, 20-something years. The business, I'm always going to respect somebody like that, and I'm always going to open my ears when he says something. because there might be that time, like you said, with with your guy, that he might say something. I'm going, oh hell just froze over. Me and Bill Hazelwood just agreed on something,
Yeah. But man, somebody complimented Luke's accent in here. That's
No,
Bruno.
that
That's
was
the Rolls
Bruno.
voice.
That
That
was
is the
Bruno.
Rolls
Sometimes
voice
I
of
love
indie
and
wrestling.
hate being British. I'm hearing you talk about Bill Hazel and all these. I'm like, who are these people? Like,
No, well, so
do they play the hockey or do they play the basketball? I don't know who they are.
No, he's a local ring announcer and all around just knows everything about the business. He's a local celebrity, you might as well say.
Yeah.
yeah, he's.
I'm
he's
just
a
gonna
big
nod
deal.
and say yes. So, okay.
But you guys talked about.
The one across the pond, isn't it? When we're talking about local stuff.
Yeah, he's lost in space because he's from over in the UK.
But I enjoy you being here, brother. I really do.
Yes,
I'm loving listening to what you're saying, though.
So a lot of the different points that we've all brought up, a lot of it's all going back to the territory days. And while I understand that, we were talking about psychology in the chat. I believe that was Mr. Burton brought that up. A lot of ring psychology seems to have disappeared.
Yeah.
And that's kind of our next talking point. Ring psychology, having a psychological storytelling match. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take the first swing at this one and say that while it wasn't everybody's cup of tea, CM Punk versus MJF told a phenomenal story for what it was. 45 minutes in the ring for a 42-year-old man. All right, he ain't Ric Flair. He hasn't done this nonstop. Let's not pretend.
Yeah.
But to go 45 minutes with a young up-and-comer like MJF, and Punk was probably, I'll give him 75, 80% of what he was, in the E as far as speed and tact and all that. But he still looked pretty good for his age. He did well. The match was great. It told a wonderful story. And none of us ever will be privy to the information that was shared between MJF and Punk because more than anything, he thanked Punk. We all know that occurred.
Oh, yeah.
That he thanked Punk when they were laying there. Because if you've never seen it, look at the end of the SummerSlam Jericho Punk match. You'll see Jericho scratch Punk's head like, hey man, good job or whatever. Just look for it. You'll see it. It's at the dead end of the match. There's a 2-second slip up of it where they had the wrong camera on. And it was just one of those things where people who knew were like, yes. And people who didn't know were like, oh, what was that?
His head.
Yeah. But Tom,
that's giving the office. When you see a guy pat someone or what, that's giving the office. So that's are we rotating? Because I want to talk about this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah. It is you.
So I agree with you. I think that Punk and MJF tore it up. And my favorite, because when you said psychology, the first match I thought of was one you just mentioned about recent matches.
Oh, yeah.
Punk had everyone believing that he was hurt. He was banged up. He's over the hill. His body's hurting. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't hurt or beat up, but he was limping. He kept selling that wrist. He kept doing this, and he did it and he didn't do it all the time, but he did it enough to where it looked like he was trying to hide it. And I picked up on that, and I thought, is he legit hurt? And my wife's sitting there, and I'm like, oh, stop. I got so sucked into it that I lost where I was. And at the end of it, I'm like, he got me. He freaking got me. Like, and again, I'm not saying he's not beat up and all that, but if he was perfectly fine, I would totally believe that as well, because he's so good and he doesn't get enough credit. Hopefully he will now, but he's always been this good. I mean, he got better as the years went by, but you're right. Him and MJF put on a clinic, and not to soapbox, but you can do certain things in certain companies when you're given time and you've got the right guy and they're not pushing a narrative and someone's not screaming in the dude's headset to put over the candy bar or whatever's going on. You can tell the story. Now, that's the wrestling nerd in me talking.
Yes.
But they killed it. And you're 100% right, in my opinion. The whole psychology of the thing, and you're right, MJF's 25. It's ludicrous to be as good as he is and to be that young. Like Okada, we forget Okada's 29, 30. How
Really?
are you this? How? I mean, he's not even, you can argue another subject. You could argue Okada's not even in his prime yet, and that's frightening because the guy is amazing. But like, and again, MJF, the future is huge and bright for him. And yeah, I'm sure he gave Punk all the gratitude that he deserved, and the right guy won. I don't care what anybody says. In my opinion, the right guy won. Punk put him over. Punk did the honors in his hometown. And as far as, well, Tom, what makes this, and I addressed this on the main event last week, what makes this different than every time a WWE guy loses in his hometown? It's first of all, that's a Vince directive. Home guys don't win in their hometown. They will beat you. They'll humiliate you, cut your hair, set you on fire. They'll have a goat come out and take a dump on you and in front of your kids, because we got to make them look bad because that's him. The difference here is that, if Punk had a problem with this, Punk would have said, all due respect, I don't know if this is the right night. And I'm sure MJF would have said, hey, look, man, you're calling it, whatever you think. But Punk knew this is the right time. We should do this. I doubt seriously, constantly, you do it or else. I just don't, in my opinion, I don't think that happened. So I love your example. I was all about that match.
Gotcha. Mr. Burton, what you got?
I will definitely agree with everything Tom said, because the storytelling up until that point was just building. Now, granted, we all got to the point where, okay, it's finally gonna happen. These two are finally gonna face off. Punk is gonna tear into him and just roll over him. After all the crap he put him through, all his frustrations build up in Punk, and he's just gonna explode on MJF. Mm-hmm. What happened? The complete opposite.
Now, Punk was more offensive during the match, though.
Yes, he was. He was
67 to 33% by somebody else's numbers, not mine. I don't remember where I read that, but there was a tail of the tape.
Well, Punk had to get his offense in because of the storytelling of him just not being able to get to MJF like he wanted to. So he had to get that frustration out. So he had to get the offense in. But MJF.
Well, again, that goes back to what Tom was saying. He was in Chicago. He had to look good even though he was losing.
Exactly. And then you were talking about psychology, the leg, the wrist, the ribs, or whatever the case may be. You were like, wow, did he really, when he hit that turnbuckle or hit the guardrail, is he got bruised or broke ribs or his wrist broke or something? And I go back to another one. WrestleMania, Stone Cold and The Rock. The last one up in Seattle.
18, right?
19.
Yeah. 18 or 19. It was one
19, 2003.
Yep. That was great storytelling.
Yeah.
And it actually, if I cut out some of the Rock's antics in that match and I watch it for what it was from a story standpoint, it really got you. Because it makes you go back to all those first two WrestleManias where he was always that close, and he never could pull it off. And then he finally overcomes, and he does it. And then even more, they had that moment after, where it was just outright obvious that you knew The Rock was thanking him in the ring. He was like, I don't care who see this. I don't care who knows, brother. I love you. Thank you for putting me over. And, that's real. That's real. That's a real moment that competitors have that's been up and down the road with each other, battling each other because you're family, man. When you're on the road literally every day out the year, maybe except for 3 or 4 days, because you might ask whoever for some time off, everybody in that crew is your family. That's why a lot of wrestlers say when they actually come home to their actual families, they're good for the first 24 hours. But after that, they were like, okay, I don't feel right. This ain't where I need to be. I got to get back on the road. Because they gotten so used to it. I know I'm getting off into a whole nother tangent, but the psychology of the match and everything that, MJF and CM Punk had was amazing. And just like The Rock and Stone Cold. That's all I got to say.
All right.
Right.
I'm gonna.
Well,
I gotta
hold
go
on.
for just a second, so I'm gonna come out of the podcast just for a second. I'll be back in like 3 minutes, and then if I'm last, I'm last. But I'm just letting y'all know I'm gonna pop out for just a minute. I got something going on at the house here. So
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott. All right, Mr. Walsh.
Fine. I'll take half an hour. I'll be fine. I think there's three parts to this. The discussion about psychology. The first part is the narrative that has been presented to tell the match. You've got philosophers like Paul Heyman, Jim Cornette, but even Tony Khan of a recent age, where we are watching a match between two wrestlers, two characters, and the story makes sense. What we saw with MJF and CM Punk has made sense since day one, since that photo of them two together when MJF was younger, to obviously the Wardlow stuff and sort of the pinnacle, and obviously MJF running away and not even touching once until that opening bell was nothing short of perfection. Whereas, something like that in Titan Towers, and they would have been having 10 matches in a row on main event before you get to see that even on Raw. And it takes the booking and the narrative to be able to support that. Then you've got the characters themselves in the ring. Another example that I will use The Rock and Austin, but I'll use their match from X7. Arguably one of the biggest main events of the year. You had Steve Austin, who just been coming in from winning the Royal Rumble, and that can he still do it? And obviously The Rock is The Rock, and what they had was the right sort of chemistry.
It was magic. It was magic.
It was magic. It was poetry in motion, and even with Vince coming out and the whole turn and the aftermath of it, it was poetry in motion. It was perfect. CM Punk versus John Cena, Money in the Bank 2011. There's so many matches between Punk and Cena that you could go back to. Even their match in 2013. When they were hitting hurricanranas and pile drivers, they've got chemistry and psychology for days on end, and they are true ring professionals. And then you've got the audience. Now, we've spoken a little bit earlier about how we all interpret wrestling and how we all interpret the business, but it's how we interpret the match and whether we are there in the moment to understand what is happening. We all live in an age where we do look at the work shoots. We look at the extremes. We look at the Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar WrestleMania 20 train wreck of where the audience just completely disrespect and disregard the narrative and the psychology that they're witnessing. But what we're seeing certainly in today's age, where and again another point that was raised earlier, where the quality of wrestling is getting so high and so good that we are seeing the likes of, Ricochet. We're seeing the likes of, even Jungle Boy. We're seeing wrestlers who are insane in ring. Even Jay Lethal is another name I'll bring to the table.
Dante Martin.
Dante
People like
Martin.
Yeah.
As well. But can work with nearly everybody. But the audience just won't give them that push that agrees on their level, and that we can say this is a good match, even though their talent is endless and their work is nothing short of superb. And it's frustrating within the business that you could and my final sort of example is the WrestleMania 35 triple threat, Ronda against Charlotte against Becky Lynch. Now what we saw was history in the making. They told the narrative of the first ever women's main event, and obviously, Becky winning the Rumble and not winning the Rumble, and the belts coming to it, and so on and so on and so on and so on. And we're all on board with it. Psychology, it was a pretty decent match in ring. It was very solid. They had a few spots go wrong here and there, but it was after an 8-hour WrestleMania. Thank God those days are over. And ultimately, it was fine in ring, but the audience just did not quite invest. Maybe it was fatigue. Maybe it was just it wasn't it. But what you saw there was the potential of a really astounding main event. Just didn't live up to the hype because the psychology just wasn't right. And it's hard when you reflect and you look back on those matches and what could have gone wrong and what could have gone right. But it is what it is. But I think ultimately psychology, in a similar way to ourselves as wrestling fans, is subjective, and we all need to be mindful of that. That what we're seeing in ring could have turned into a worksheet one bit, but ultimately, when it's done right, it's poetry. And yeah,
Mr. Taylor.
Well, psychologically, excuse me, y'all. Psychologically, I believe they did get the audience invested in it. I believe I believe it worked out well as far as building a story and building a wrestling match that people wasn't really expecting. I think they might have expected some sort of like what came out, but they didn't expect it to go 45 minutes. For CM Punk to be ready to excuse me, last that long. So, I mean, it showcased CM Punk of what he used to be. It brought out every single bit of what he used to be. Like you said, Ron, maybe 65, 75%. I had it like 65%. Maybe he's at that space now, but maybe 70, 75%. And then you had MJF. He did what he usually did. And he puts on a very good match. And he pretty much, he took the lead from the veteran. And, it basically, it built something. And it built something in the fans. And they like, oh, we're looking at something different here. These guys are, I go back to Luke when Luke was saying, they missed a few spots here and there. And they did. But I think the fans started looking at more of some of the old school things that they did to actually get the fans invested in it. Looking at this match and looking at the ring psychology that was going on, I think the fans was I think the fans really took an eye to this and say, okay, we're not seeing guys fly around the ring, even though we did have some high flying moves and all that. They're not just flying around the ring and trying to get this match over early. They're trying to get us. They're trying to grab us, grab attention to us to where we can see something down the road from these guys. Or if we don't see anything down the road, we can start being ready for wrestling matches from these guys. We can look at CM Punk and all the injuries, he with him having to in the match and all that, and he's coming back. He's coming back and he's pulling things out. It's just like saying somebody in a fight, say a boxing match or whatever. How much heart do they have? This guy's getting tired and all that, but he has so much heart, he's able to pull it out. So now a little bit later on down the road, when they see CM Punk in the ring against somebody and he's struggling, they can, instead of turning their back and say, "Oh man, this is boring. I'm getting tired of it." He brought it out in a good match to where people will say, "Okay, now I can have the patience to watch this man come back, just like back in the old days. Come back, make a comeback in a match, and be able to top his opponent." The same thing with MJF. So I think it was a really good match, psychology wise, as something to bring to today that we're missing in professional wrestling. Now, this is not the only match that we had like this in this realm. I mean, there's a few other matches in the last six months to a year that we can point to that built the story like that. But this one right here was a good example, and I thought it was a pretty good match, man.
It's not even that. Just quickly, I mean, even after the first finish where he was choked out and he passed out, and the use of the tape with the it's going to be Punk's going to get the second fall, it's going to be and it's over, and the complete 180 on that, and for MJF to get the win not once but twice is magnificent. And you touch upon the audience, is that we expected this match to take place at Revolution or even at Double or Nothing, because it has that sort of stretch and that sort of diversity to the story that they are telling, that they can stretch it on for weeks on end. And even after the result last Wednesday, we're still anticipating the next match that they will have because we know they
Right.
have such a high bar to clear that they are going to do whatever they can. They try their damnedest to be able to surpass that and then some. And then all of a sudden we're talking about this match. And then in 2 or 3 years' time, if they come across that, and they're gonna push it, and it's just it quantifies the exact reason why CM Punk is perfect for AEW and why he came
Yeah.
back on August
Yeah,
2020.
it left room for, like you said, it left room for us to anticipate a greater match next time. So yeah, it left room for them to continue this feud on, or if even if they don't continue the feud and start it up a couple months later, people are gonna remember what happened the last time, and they're gonna remember that this was not a match that was rushed. This was a match that a whole bunch of different things happened in that match, and it took a lot for CM Punk. CM Punk almost pulled it out, even though he was hurt like he was. He almost pulled it out. So people are gonna expect that, and people are gonna see a different side of him right now, and it's gonna bring the fans back to his side. Some of the fans that kind of like backed off of it.
Now I want to, Tom. Now, how old did you say Okada was?
He's 30, isn't he? Am I right?
I don't know. My God, because you got me thinking now. Because I've dabbled in a lot of New Japan. You can ask Harry. I'm like, dude, you need to watch some of this old.
Future Okada is 34.
Yeah, he's 34. He's
Okay.
a baby. He's a
Dude,
baby in this stuff. There's guys wrestling they're 50. He's still.
But
Yeah.
the funny thing is, you can look at Okada and just see I'm gonna dare say the ring wisdom.
Oh yeah.
The ring wisdom is laying on this man like a invisible sheet, and he looks like he's 900 for his in-ring wisdom. But y'all know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, like this dude knows everything about wrestling in like the back of his hand. That's wow. I had no idea. Man, you gonna make me watch some New Japan after I get off here now, man. Thank God I'm off tomorrow.
So I gotta add a comment.
What New Japan do, and it's the unique audience and the unique setup it is that their silence, the audience silence of watching exactly what is in the ring, every single move, every single counter. It's glorious. It's like.
And they don't pop until after the move set is done.
Exactly.
That's when they pop.
You know, it almost makes you want to go to one of these backyard shows and tell people to shut up and just let the silence be the sound that you want to hear. And even as we've seen the King of England himself, Mr. Will Ospreay, put out 5-star match, but that's because he is solely focused on not only who he's working with in ring, not only with the storytelling that he has to put over and portray, but also he knows that every single pair of eyes and ears are on him constantly from the opening build to the last.
Yes,
and you know there are language barriers and cultural barriers between Japan and the United States and the United Kingdom, but when you just watch it and you just concentrate and let it drink in,
it's so beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Their wrestling is more of an art form than anything when you're comparing the UK style, which is predominantly
very strong style,
yes, brawler. Yes, thank God. Which I'm a huge proponent of NXT UK. Now, when you're comparing Japan, which is predominantly more the art style of it, one thing I had to explain to my wife is if you watch Japanese wrestling, be prepared to be quiet. She goes, wait, what? I was like, you'll notice that the Japan fans all wait and they applaud and then they put their hands down. And it almost seems awkward at times, but it's because they're so invested in it. Now, before we move on to the next topic, I got to bring this up because somebody is talking about Mr. Walsh here. Michael King has said, greetings. And, you can read the comment for yourself. I'm not going to sit here and, do that. But so we're talking about a local manager is going to try to get booked in the UK for one of his talents.
I mean, that would be something. I mean, I'm sure that there are plenty of UK indie promotions, he'd happily bite his hand off and take him up for a ride. I mean, if he wants to come over to the United Kingdom, good luck to him, because we British brawlers, we do like to fight, and we'll see what he has to put up with. So
Hey, well, don't be surprised if you get reached out to. That's all I'm gonna tell you, because he's going to be looking for somebody with information, and you have more information than we do.
To be honest, if he's looking for a replacement and a mouthpiece for a wrestler on the indie scene, then look no further.
You're not. Trust me, you can't. You don't even want to know. You don't even want to know. We'll have to talk about Michael King off the air. We will have to talk about Mr. King off the air. I think very highly of Mr. King. He's a phenomenal manager. HVW, High Velocity. I'm telling you, you want to hear a mouthpiece, you need to check out my interview with my man right here. He's a class act and a veteran. So, thank you to your service to all the vets out there. Big time props on that one. Somebody else brought up because we were talking about MJF versus CM Punk, they brought up Danielson versus Hangman Adam Page. The build to the match was better than the match, in my opinion.
I agree.
When it came to Adam Page and Bryan Danielson. And that goes for either of the two matches, not just one, but both. The build was better than either independently. Now, obviously, if you put both of them together, it means something different. But the one thing that I have said that drives me kind of insane with that is I just want to know who I have to buy stock in for razor blades when it comes to AEW, because God, they blade so often. That almost takes me out of it. That almost takes me out of it at some times, because it's not. I'm not saying we need to see people get busted open the hard way. Please, good God, no. I don't need that. I know what a concussion does. I don't want that. No. What I'm saying is they have to find a way to make it more or less obvious, number one, and more impactful or meaningful. Barely inserted when needed. Barely inserted when it's really valuable. In South Carolina, we can't do that. You can't bleed in South Carolina.
Accidents do happen.
Accidents happen. That's one thing. However,
but on purpose,
that's not allowed here.
No.
They will shut your show down.
I think you're nitpicking compared to the old days of WWE, where they would bleed buckets every single week.
I thought it was stupid then too, and I was a kid. I didn't like ECW for that reason.
Oh, wow.
I liked ECW because it was so obscure. It's actually the same thing that's attracting me to Impact. It's very unpredictable, and it's not because the wrestling matches are all that wonderful on Impact Wrestling. They're not. They're pretty decent, but let's face facts. When you're comparing production quality, to beat out the one on every side of the ball. When you're talking about character-wise, still, when you're talking about some of the wrestlers that's in Impact, I'm really invested in them. But some of the foolishness, the malarkey, the gaga does not fit. It's just over the top. Now, Tom mentioned GCW earlier. I believe Tom mentioned it. I know somebody else said they knew this much about it. Look, I watched that pay-per-view from start to finish. It was hard to watch because it was so abstract and obscure, but it was entertaining because you were like, if they just did this, what's next? Like, how do you follow this? Some of the bumps were disgusting. Some of the commentary, Tom, it's not, I'm going to tell you the truth. Do you watch or listen to a lot of stuff with a lot of cursing and just horrid remarks?
So I may have put over the wrong signal to you as you've been watching the main event. I curse in real life, kids. I'm not
okay.
I'm not an angel here or anything.
It's
just that on my own show, I choose to keep it clean, because if some dude's watching and their kid walks in, they don't have to go, "Oh God, get out of here." That's me. It doesn't mean everyone has to work that way. It's just And plus, it's easier for me to get stuff through Apple and Google and everything and all the platforms. If I don't have to label it and censor it and explicit warning and all that, I can get it out. Don't have to worry about that stuff. But the GCW thing, I didn't. That was me that said, and I'm being fair because I know this much about them. But I watched the kickoff show of the pay-per-view, and granted, that's all I watched. But whoever had the mic is screaming. I'm like, okay, you do you, man, cool. And then he says, this is GCF&W. And I thought, cool.
Wow.
I knew that promotion when it was ECF&W. And in my head, I'm thinking, is that all you got? Is that it? Is that all we're doing in 2022? That's the best you got? Like,
Right.
you can't do anything differently? Like, I don't know. To me, it felt like a song I'd heard before, and I've heard it, and I didn't like it the first time I heard it. So I'm like, eh. And that's not to diss Heyman or ECW. They had a niche, and the niche was this big. And at the end of the day, the niche didn't get any bigger. And that's one of the reasons why they folded, right? But I mean, go with God, brother. If it works and it's making money, and that's the key. You're talking about crazy bumps. That's the key. When you went through the 12 tables that were on fire through the barbed wire and the light tubes, and they threw a baby in there and everyone's dead, did you get $1,000 for that, or did you get $15? Because if you got $15, you got played, and you're an idiot. Okay. And I would argue you're an idiot anyway. Just saying, taking years off your career. But these guys talking about, oh, I'm getting respect and I'm earning my stripes. No, you're not. You bled like a sieve. You got $12. How's that getting credit? How's that earning your stripes? You look like a clown. Now, that's my take. Some people love the blood and gut stuff. Again, go with God, but that's not me.
Now, I will say this, Ron, about the color. If you remember the territory days, probably looking back at Peacock or whatever back in the day in the 80s and all that, who was the biggest one that you can remember that would bleed like a stuffed pig? I will say Flair.
I was going to say Flair and or Rhodes, but that's
Rhodes. Yeah.
And his forehead told that story in his later years.
Yes. Now, but here's the thing, though. They only did it when it mattered.
Yeah.
When there was like, let's say, they've had 30,000 matches for the title. Rhodes can't get it, but this particular Starcade, he's going to get it in a cage. Oh, somebody's going to have to leak. Somebody's going to have some color.
Right.
Because they're showing the value and the importance. But like you were saying, back to your point, AEW does overdo it. They do. I mean, you go out there on an interview and somebody just headbutts you and you look like you got your head cut off. What? That makes no sense. I'm like, come on now. I mean, jeez.
If you're talking about honest to God headbutt, I don't think that's intentional. I think that's hard way right there.
But I'm just saying, you know how you can just like walk up to somebody and just give somebody a headbutt and they flop, and next thing you know they're just covered it like they busted a ketchup bottle on their head. I'm like,
well, AEW is doing everything they can right now to increase their fan base, and it doesn't matter. I mean, they are taking the boundaries as far as they can. So they've seen it work before. They saw it work in the Attitude Era, and it's something that they're grabbing the hold of and seeing that if they can reclaim that magic. So we're going to see things like that from AEW. It's not at that point yet, but they are opening the doors. They have opened up the box and let a lot of wrestlers go out there and do what they want to do. You hear Tony Schiavone and Jim Ross. I mean, some of the words they say you never heard them say before. So in the past, so we're going to see things like that we're not used to seeing.
But what we're seeing in AEW is a diverse range. What we're seeing is the maximum and the minimum. What we're seeing is the maximum, highest quality of wrestlers. Your Kenny Omegas, your Bryan Danielsons, your John Moxleys, your Adam Pages. You're seeing the highest quality wrestling you're doing, and you're getting the full impact of it all. And then you've got the minimum of people like Danhausen and Orange Cassidy who don't need to do that much to still be entertaining and still have that much of an audience impact. And there's a hidden beauty that within the Orange Cassidy that he can do so little and engage so much. And in the same way that sort of Volta used to do back in NXT UK, back when they used to respect him. In his promo style and his sort of get on with it sort of attitude of, you know, I will stand tall. I will be this German juggernaut, and I will tear a hole into your chest until you stop breathing. It was just fantastic compared to somebody like, you know, Gargano or Ciampa or even Roman Reigns, who go off on the mic for 15, 20 minutes to get your point across. It's simplicity. It's minimalism. It's just keep it very simple. But one concerning point about their range is, whilst they've got the maximum minimum, whilst they've got the wide array of talent, is that what they're starting to find is that they are starting to become saturated. And what they are struggling to do is what they do with this talent. I read somewhere just over Christmas and New Year's that, you know, Chris Jericho, the first undisputed world champion in WWF history, of 20 years ago, and somebody who was the trailblazer in the early days of AEW, he's tucked very nicely in the mid card. Like he's not even doing anything of comment. It's something that is so surprising that there's so much talent even coming through, and that they're building up at the moment, is that people are being forgotten about. People are being left behind, and they just don't have enough time, enough space to divide them up between Dark Elevation, between Dynamite, between Rampage. That, you know, yes, on in the WWE calendar, they go on the house show circuit and they'd be working dark matches and so on. But AEW just doesn't have that capacity. But that's the positive. That they don't need to run a house circuit each and every week to wear out its stars, to make them their athletes more injury prone, in that they can focus on television week in, week out, and be able to spotlight them as much as they can. But they're starting to pay the price, and it's frustrating to see it. And even I said earlier about Jay Lethal, like, we talked about Ring of Honor, and we talked about, you know, the work that he does in TNA Impact. He's got talent for days, but because there's so many other people in the company, like Adam Cole, like Ethan Page, like Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy, like there's FTR, and, you know, there's Wardlow, and it's just all these people. It's just it's becoming too much, and it's hard to see.
And it's funny, Luke, you talk about that being oversaturated. Actually, me and Harry just talked about that in our earlier podcast on our show.
Yes.
About that, where basically you got so many people on your roster where, to a degree, you're getting paid to eat and catering. Yeah, you get a paycheck because you're required to be there, but then be like, what are you doing tonight? Oh, I'm just chilling, eating a bag of Doritos and getting a paycheck. And I might watch a match, you know, or I might, you know, talk to somebody about their match, and, you know, and see how it turns out. But like, so you're not doing anything else? Nah, I might have a milkshake later on from catering or something, and then go to the next show or go home. But other than that, that's what I'm getting paid to do, because there's so much talent, and you only got so much TV time or internet time or whatever the case may be. And it's just like, matter of fact, I'll go back to a point. Michael King said something in the earlier years of our podcast. He said something, and I think he said there was a Vietnamese tradition when you had two warring tribes. There was a tradition that one tribe was like, okay, look, enough is enough. We're going to basically give you a peace offering. We're going to give you a white elephant. And that white elephant is like our pride and joy. You cannot kill the white elephant. The white elephant must live. If the white elephant dies, we're at war. So what happens? You take the white elephant, and the white elephant, you do everything for it to such a point where the white elephant takes over the everyday goings of the village, to the point where the people don't eat. They don't, you know, they're just catering to the white elephant. And it's like you literally have let yourself get consumed by taking on somebody else's burden. And that's what AEW has done to a degree with talent. They're taking on so much talent that the talent you originally had that could have sustained it are lost in the shuffle, because you're trying to take on people from ROH, Impact, New Japan, WWE, and you're forgetting about the people that helped you build what you have. If that makes sense.
I'll be in the
Yep.
minority and politely disagree with some of this. Khan's not stopping. Someone's debuting tomorrow night. If they're, and I don't know if they're profitable or not. I assume they are because of the TV deal. If they're generating revenue, and they can keep doing this, I say load it up, because I was at Battle of the Belts in Charlotte. It wasn't the best show I've ever been to, but it wasn't the worst either. No Moxley, no Jericho, no FTR, all the guys you just mentioned. No one. Punk, Danielson, Page was there. No one else. And we still had talent for days. If Roman gets hurt tonight, that's 75% of SmackDown gone. 80% gone. Brock, same deal. Because they got a bench that they don't care about. They don't cultivate anyone. You know what I mean? They've got these two guys, and there's Randy, and there's everybody else, and that's how they roll. But with AEW, at any given time, they can pull anyone for any reason. If a guy says, I'm burned out, I need a break, boom, put this guy here. If this guy breaks his arm tonight, boom, put this guy here. They're not lack for talent. And you guys may be right to a point, because is there going to come a breaking point when they can no longer financially do this, and then guys are being forced to be released? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that the other guys signed up every talent on the planet so AEW couldn't have them, and then they released them citing financial hardship and budgetary reasons, and they just turned the biggest profit in the history of their company again. I don't think they had a plan for any of those cats. I think AEW, on the flip side, does have a plan for these guys. I don't know what the plan is. I doubt seriously they're signing anyone from anywhere going, just put them on the roster, we'll get ratings. I just don't believe that. I think that there's something for everybody that they're bringing in. And I'm 100% a Jay Lethal guy. I don't know about the stuff that's went on with him on the personal side. I hope it's wrong. Man, there's some bad stuff being said. But from a point in the ring, at any given time, he may have been the greatest wrestler in the world. Subjectively, he's great.
Well, Jay Lethal is very good. And, you just brought up one point. I was prepared for it to come up because of the recent issues that have come out with the Brian Kendrick, so to speak. Folks, and Tom, you said this the other day on your podcast, and this was the point at which I had put you in my pocket to walk back in my office, where we're not allowed to have phones on the floor. Now, what I do is I throw an earbud in and I go in. But at any rate, what Tom said is basically, if you don't think you should say it, please don't say it on the internet, because that's going to live forever. And you're not wrong. Now, I do have a thought to add to this. When people say, because it's been a big deal right now, especially with Spotify. You have podcasts on Spotify. Are you pulling your content from Spotify right now?
I thought about it. I've not done it yet. But it's a thought, because Rogan, another topic, kids, but yikes. All right.
And so, you're not wrong. You're not wrong there. That is your opinion. However, just like all of us in here, he said something there. But in the cases of guys like the Brian Kendrick and what he said, he was spouting off about conspiracy theories and other theories into the matter, more so than he was being. I'm not defending the guy because I don't know him from Adam, but when you're talking along a level of a disease, in Rogan, I'm not talking about the racial epithets that he laid out there, which that's sickening on its own. That's a whole nother ballgame. But the original controversy with him started over statements to deal with the COVID. Then you had more conversation come up with Kendrick and the anti-Semitism conspiracy things. Then you have all these other ones coming out. The reality is this: I don't know what anybody says outside of when I'm talking to them. I don't know what anybody does outside of when I am around them. Right? Would you all agree in that statement? I don't know what you guys do outside of this because
Unless I put it on Twitter, then you'll know.
Well, yeah, unless we're live on video and then it's set there forever.
Yeah.
But like when it comes to, you know, for example, a guilty verdict from a jury, right?
Yeah.
The jury really doesn't know what happened because they weren't there. They had to go by what they found out with evidence, right?
Exactly.
So in the end, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I don't know. I wasn't there. Now, did I go back and listen to Rogan? No, I didn't. The guy's a freaking comedian. He's an entertainer. He's not a doctor. He's not a lawyer. He's not anything. He is an entertainer. He is another person I could argue with to say, you know, he's on that same precipice as we were speaking of earlier about Meltzer. $100 million deal or whatever the hell it is from Spotify. Insanity. That is a ridiculous sum of money. But look at what the guy's got his hand in. He's got his hand in the UFC. Do you think that stuff from his podcast is going to affect the UFC? No, I don't either. I don't think there's a lot of merit in this. And a lot of people, you know, made the remark about, oh, you can't have Brian Kendrick on AEW. What'd he say? I wasn't there. You see what I mean? I wasn't there. I don't know what he said, but apparently he made a video that didn't go over real good. Now, it's just one of those things, man, where it's like, if people wanted to play that game, right, then you're talking about cancel culture going all the way back into the NWA rap days, and we're talking about Ice Cube needing to be canceled because he said something about your junk being crooked from catching herpes, which is wrong as all get out anyway. But that was a statement in a song from Ice Cube.
Yeah, true.
Is that in the same vein as this now? You see what I mean? You can't have it one way without the other. And in my book, it's like this. I don't want to offend anybody. I'm here to as this is fun for me. This is entertaining for me, and I hope to hell I entertain the audience that tunes in. You guys are here, and I'm hoping I'm being engaging and entertaining with you. But beyond that, I'm not here to crap on anybody's parade or dilute anybody's history or make anything worthless or seamless. But at the same time, you got to know that you can't go back into everything and dig up every skeleton that's buried out there because you'll never get done. You won't get done this process. This will be a never-ending. Luke, we're going to have to go back to Hamlet. We're going to have to go back that far. Because God, people want to talk about the Ravens. Put this one into your perspective here. The Ravens are an NFL team named from Edgar Allan Poe, who was in Baltimore. So hold up. You mean to tell me that there's a football team who's named after a pedophilic incest dude? What is that? Because he was like married to his 14-year-old cousin or something. That's incestual and pedophilic. So, like, come on here. Yeah, you can't. It's impossible to go through everything and control it all and cancel it all. Exactly. It's not going to happen.
That's true.
I don't believe. I'm not going to say the guy shouldn't have been pulled off air, but if old boy loses his job over that, like I say, I don't know what was said. So,
well, Ron, you can go back to the Velveteen Dream.
Just before you guys carry on, I'm going to dip out. I feel very stimulated. It's gone like 25-3. Luke, I can stay here for hours on end, but I won't get any sleep tonight. But
before you go, because Scott had to leave. Scott had to leave due to a family emergency. And Scott, we wish you well for whatever's going on there, and good luck in your upcoming surgery, my friend. We will see you when you get back. We have a special topic that Scott picked out for when we do this again. And Scott's around, we'll do that then. Luke, do me a favor. On your way out the door, my friend, please drop your social media stuff that we need to follow to be able to enjoy more of that European flair.
The European flair. I mean, I am the European flair. I can still go, baby. I am the. If you go check out Buckabomb Entertainment, go check out the TRWC. You can find me over there, and you can check me out at One Walshmeister over on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, where I'll be talking a lot of wrestling and what's right and what's wrong with it. So, I've got a dip. Otherwise, I need to lie down after what we just talking about. So,
All right.
Good night, sir.
All right.
Take it easy.
Have a good one. Have a good evening.
All right.
Uh,
So
All right.
So we were talking about how you can only dig up so much, but Tom, how deep does that rabbit hole go? We're just gonna continue the circle.
Pretty deep. And there's pro wrestling is not Teflon. It's the Jay Lethal stuff is very concerning. He mentioned Osprey. Osprey stuff is a little concerning. There's I think that there are degrees to this stuff. The issue becomes, even if it's just words speak to character, right?
Mhm.
If a white man says the N-word and it's pulled up on social media, well, Tom, he's learned, and the guy says, well, I've learned from, yeah, but does that speak to character, or you were just young and dumb? Is it both? How do you know? You're taking that guy's word for it. Oh, I was young and dumb. Okay, but you weren't raised any better than that, because I was. Like, I don't know. I think there's degrees to this stuff. If you're talking about harassment, if you're talking about coming at a woman in a certain way, and you're thinking you can get away with things because you are who you are. I mean, it's and that stuff gets found out. What's funny is I think there's just as many people yelling, not that you're doing it, that there's just many people yelling about cancel culture as there is people trying to cancel people. So you've got like two different sides of this that, like, I do think that a lot of this is good, because if there's villains out there that are true villains, they need to be found out, in my opinion. They've been hiding for too freaking long. Get them out of the cover of darkness and expose them for what they are. And I'm fine with that. I mean, I think my kid's 13, and I think that his generation has a better chance of getting this thing right than any generation we've ever seen, including mine, because my kid has friends of every color, and he doesn't see color. He doesn't care about it. He's not been raised that way, but he goes to school with kids who are special needs, and he doesn't describe them that way because he knows better. He doesn't see things that a lot of other people see. And he's not the only one. A lot of his friends are the exact same way. So hopefully this generation will get it right, where we all screwed it up, and they'll be the ones to say, hey, I think we can get this done. So if all that brings about a positive, I'm for it. But to your point, how far is too far? I mean, if I said something dumb 20 years ago, will it come back to haunt me? I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? But
I mean, look, when it boils down to it, we got 7 billion people on this earth, and you're not going to get rid of all of this. I mean, anything as far as what people saying, people getting offended and things like that. I mean, it's going to be there. It's going to be there. But as far as cancel culture go, and as far as our rights to say what we want to say, I believe in that 100%. Now, if you pull up some you can pull up a lot of people, and it's not just white, not just black, and you can pull up black people too. You can pull up a lot of things that someone said years ago, and pull it out and say, look at here, look at what they said. This is racist, this is homophobic, this is anti-Semitism, or anything like that. Man, you can pull that up, and you can say, think about what this person was back in the day. You pull it up and say, okay, and you still can tag that person with whatever they said from back in the day, and you can and then you look at the way we go out and we try to counsel people, and you can counsel them and ruin their life, and it is no greater way to do it now, because you have social media and everything where it can get to everybody, and you can ruin somebody's life completely. And their total being, the person who they are, might be completely changed. So we do not know that. And I agree with you, Tom. I mean, my kids now, I mean, they're older than that. My youngest, she's 23 now. But when she was growing up, and my son, when he's 30, my autistic son, man, those kids in the schools, man, he went to school up until he was 21, high school. And those kids, man, in that whole school, they treated him like gold and treated those other children in there. They didn't treat him the way we did when we was back in school. It's a total different game. And this generation, like I say, they definitely have a better chance to get it right than all the generations before. Because, I mean, you see the interaction with them and how they carry themselves and all that. But we do have a whole media out, and this is outside of Joe Rogan. Now, Joe Rogan, not really a media. He brings people on his show and he gets their opinion. And yes, of course, he did say something, as far as bringing up the N-word a while back, and it's been brought back up. But, I don't really care if they take him off or he stays on. I really don't care. Because as far as he go, and, I can listen to somebody like, let me see. Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, she just said, what was she saying? The thing about the Jews? She said the Holocaust wasn't about race. She said that on The View. She got suspended for 2 weeks. So if you're going to cancel somebody, go ahead and cancel her. Okay. And then let's look at on MSNBC. What is her name? The black lady on MSNBC. She's always on there and she talks about, she brings up things sometimes that's not true. She'll always say the white man this, white that. So we have it both ways. And so when you sit there and you try to grab something and say, okay, this guy done offended, he's offended the black man. He's offended black people. Okay. So this person should be canceled, destroy their whole life. Or this person said something against saying something against the LGBT community, cancel them. So it's a slippery slope when we start going down that, and even in wrestling, because we have it in wrestling too. And we have a couple people who's been big in this industry for a long time, and certain things came out about them. And one is Hulk Hogan. Some come out about it, and it's pretty much derailed what he was. So I just don't know. I mean, you have to take it, and you have to really step back and think. Say, okay, I'm on Spotify. Yeah, Joe Rogan is on there. He said this, but should it affect you that much to where you're gonna say, okay, I'm gonna pull back because I don't want to be associated with that? But Spotify is a big platform with a lot of different artists, a lot of different podcasters, a lot of different menu. It's a lot on that menu. So you have to sit back and say, okay, so I'm gonna let this one person affect me. It's just like you say, Tom, with your son, and you wasn't brought up that way. You're not bringing him up that way. So that right there is the greatest representation that we can put out into the world that this stuff is not acceptable no more. So I remember one time I was shopping. No, not shopping. It was when I was working for Winn-Dixie back a long time ago. This probably about 25 years ago, or whatever. And lady come through, and I just talk to her and her husband all the time. And she come through with her son one time. And he said, and he saw somebody come through. He didn't say it to me, but he saw another person come by. He said, "Hey, black boy." And she grabbed and put a hand over his mouth, and she started running off. And then she came by me, and I stopped her. I said, "Look," I said, "do you really want your son growing up in today's world like that?" And she said, "No." She said, "I definitely don't." And she said, "We have to teach them better." But by people like you and even us, you're teaching your child the right way. That is the best representation that you can give. But you hear, as far as a wrestler, let's try to keep it on wrestling. Something that Brian Kendrick might have said, or or maybe Ric Flair said, like Teddy Long said. He said certain things to him. Ole Anderson was definitely one of the people that he wasn't a stranger to the N-word. So, but you have people like that, and you can tell your child when they hear things like that, and say your son is a fan of professional wrestling, and he heard that these wrestlers were saying that. You talk to your son and say, okay, they said that, but that's something that we're never gonna do. You don't hear me talking like that, so you're not gonna talk like that. You're not gonna disrespect anybody because of their race. But man, later on down in life, sometimes people can change. I mean, I can't say Ole Anderson has changed. He's still the same person he was before, from what I'm seeing from him. But hopefully what we're hoping is that we have built it's the same thing. You know, I was born in the midst of civil rights movement. I was born at the end of it. I was born in '67, a year before Martin Luther King died. So I came up in the aftermath of it. You know, I came up in the '70s, and I had, you know, and I grew up around people that were constantly, you know, grew up in the South where people constantly used the word and would blame certain things on because blacks was, you know, becoming, starting to get things in society. So I was around that. So, but you know, as I went through and my character grew, you know, my character, these people saw my character. I was around their children and all that because we you know, I grew up in white neighborhoods all my life back when I was little. It was always 97 to 99% white. So I was around in the 70s growing up. I was around predominantly white, in a predominantly white neighborhood. So I came across so many. It was mainly the teenage kids, because they would tell their brothers, who I used to play with, their brothers when I was 7, 8 years old, 9 years old. Y'all don't supposed to be playing with each other. We down at the creek catching fish and things like, you know, looking at water moccasins and stuff like that. And they say, y'all don't supposed to be playing with each other. Y'all supposed to be fighting. And around that time, I was around 8 years old, man. You know, and I grew up and I grew up boxing because I grew up boxing. I had a best friend named Lee. His brothers came by. The two of his brothers and their friends, they was in a truck. And they were like, you guys supposed to be fighting. The other guys was in the pickup truck in the back, and they was in front. You guys supposed to be fighting. Y'all don't supposed to be playing like that. And these guys were teenagers. They was 18, anywhere from 17 to 19 years old. A couple of them was in high school. A couple of them just had graduated. Because, you know, I knew all of them. And so Lee was like, he turned around. You know, they started speaking to him and all that. And Lee turned around. He looked at me. He said, we've been friends. We started as friends and stuff like that. He said, but now your ass is grass. You know, this was around 1974. I'm like 7 years old. I'm like, what? And so he started coming at me, you know, with some punches and all that. But me being trained as a boxer, because I was trained from, you know, like 4 years old on up to that time. I had been trained as a boxer for like 3 years. So I sidestepped him easily. But I had got into wrestling at that time. 7, 8 years old, I had learned about wrestling. My brother was watching Mid-Atlantic Championship wrestling. I go over to grandma's house, aunts and uncles. That's all he did. So I really got into wrestling, but I didn't know I knew all those moves. So I sidestepped him, you know, went and took him down, took an arm bar, took him down, came back up. I caught him in a full Nelson. And I was doing all this stuff to him so he wouldn't hit me, and I wouldn't have to punch him because he was my friend. I didn't want to punch him. I didn't want to just beat him. And his brothers and all that, his brothers and friends, like, what are you doing? Those teenagers, what are you doing? That's not fighting. That's not fighting. You wrestling. You watch a lot of wrestling, don't you? I said yes. And so they convinced me. They was like, you know, ragging on me because I was wrestling. I was wrestling instead of boxing. So I decided to stand there toe to toe with him in boxing and beat him up in boxing. After that, man, his brothers, because like I said, they used to use the N-word at that time with me and all that. They would say things about blacks and all that. After that, man, those teenagers, best friend, took me everywhere. They're like, y'all want to, after we fought, y'all want to get in the car, y'all want to go and get some ice cream. So through the years, that generation, our generation, Generation X, which Chris is part of Generation X. I think Tom, you must be Generation X too. You say in the 80s, you was 80s kid. So throughout that generation, man, I believe we built up so much as far as race relations go, and it started being tore down again. And I think that had to do with a lot of the political parties. I'm not going to say which political party. It's both when it boils down to it. A lot of it came from our media and everything. They started tearing down a lot of things that we built back up. But still, this generation, when it comes down to it, you see these young people today, you know, they dating each other. They hanging out with each other. They're doing whatever they want to do. I think they hear it and they see all of it. And we have the outside world. We have the news media, the political world. We have some older people that's trying to break it down for them, but they're not listening to that. So, once again, like I said, we are the greatest inspiration to the youth to get it right. So That's all I got to say on that subject.
Now, just to add to it real quick, it's also our responsibility to help guide them in the correct direction as well. I
That's
mean,
right.
my kids are younger. I mean, 6 and 9 are my kids, and I see their little friends and whatever. Whenever they get the chance to be around them, I personally during the whole COVID thing was like, nah, y'all ain't having people over. Nah, we're not going there. I'm not. And it's not because I was bought and sold into the whole thing. It's more or less, I don't know you. I don't know what you're about. I don't care. For right now, we stand over here washing our hands, and y'all can do what you want and please on your own time. But I cut the world out when it was time to do it. Now, with all of us being in independent wrestling, especially, there's no place for this mess in what we do. There's not.
No doubt.
Yeah.
But that comes on us to teach it as to be not acceptable today. That's not to say that I'm not going to go back to the 70s when HBT just beat up a little kid. You see what I'm saying? I'm not going to use that as a catalyst against you. I wouldn't say that because you were defending yourself, number one.
Right.
But you see how easily somebody can try to turn that. That's the problem with all of it today.
Right.
The easy ability to turn it and flip the narrative. But in today's society, for all of us, especially, we have a voice, and people hear our voices, and they whether they pay to get in the gate and hear us, or they subscribe on the podcast, or they watch the live, they hear us, and we're all on here. Four people, four predominantly different backgrounds, I would assume. Me being from DC, what was I around? Everything and everybody. And it's just like, I never thought anything of it. I was taught, a couple of words in Japanese when I was a kid. God knows I don't remember them now. They have long since been knocked out of my head. But, working in Baltimore, working in West Virginia, working in PA, working everywhere. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care.
Well, Ron, kind of off. I'm in the same room y'all talking about, but it's kind of off wrestling subject. I'm in a fraternity. I'm a Freemason. One of the world's largest fraternity. I'm sure everybody's heard of it.
Yeah.
Well, I remember one night I was frequenting a club here in town, here in Greenville, and I had on my ring. Well, the guy at the door was patting me down, and he knows my ring. He's like, "Oh, you're a Mason." I'm like, "I am." He's like, "Well, when you get a chance, I need to talk to you about some stuff." I'm like, "All right, cool, no problem." So I'm in there, having a couple of drinks, just minding my own business, and some of my friends just happened to come up in there, and we're talking chit-chat and whatever. Well, the bouncer, a few hours while I'm in there, he comes to me. He's like, "Hey, man, you got a moment to talk?" I'm like, "Sure, what's up?" He's like, "Hey, man, I'm from Philly. I've only been down." I'm from Boston. Only been down here maybe like 6-7 months, and I respect, you as a Mason because I see how y'all interact up there. You do a lot for the community and different people and everything, blah, 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 blah. It's a beautiful thing, and I want to be a part of it. I was like, okay, cool. He's like, but because of some situations in his life, he wasn't able to do it, and he moved down here. And he still wanted to do it. So there is even though we are brotherhood, is a racial divide, unfortunately. And he found out somebody who's a Mason, and he's going through the process. At the time he was talking to me, he's like, "Yeah, I'm going through the process, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera." I was like, "Okay, cool. So we're talking about it and everything, whatever." And then he tells me this particular night, after he's going through the process, right before him and some other guys that are going through the process with him leave, he said the top guy in the lodge basically said, "Oh yeah, by the way, guys, if I hear of you talking, fraternizing, or associating with any Black Masons, you're out of here. You're blackballed."
Oh, wow.
And I was shocked, but I wasn't. But he was completely blown back because being up north, it's a whole different world up there. You know, everybody got along with everybody. And he's like, I don't get it. He's like, but I remember from what I saw up north in Boston and all up in there and everything, everybody was all cool. I was like, yes, we are. We are. We are one brotherhood. Everybody gets along, but you have the good old boys down here on both sides. You have the good old boys. And this the older generation and that mentality and everything and all that and whatever. And I explained it to him. He's like, oh, I get it. I was like, yeah, you haven't been down here that long. I've been down here all my whole life. And unfortunately, it's an undertone. Unfortunately. I hate it, but it is. It's just the reality. And even with wrestling, like Harry said, back in the day, there was undertones, even though they wouldn't, put out like it was, now. There were undertones, like Ole Anderson, and there's mentions of Ric Flair saying some things, Hulk Hogan saying things, and it's just whether they said it with malice or just said it to make a point, like I would say, Tom, you my homie, you my man, you my boy, you my partner, but instead saying something else, the N word, to replace all those words I just said, it's just a awkward situation, man, and a slippery slope. But this generation of our kids, they do have an opportunity, and our generation, I dare say all of us are in Generation X, have the responsibility to look back on our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, and even our generation, and take that knowledge that we've learned to this point to teach them, hey, don't do this, do this, because this didn't work. This has a possibility to work if you keep going this way, So, and like my daughter, she went to predominantly just about all white high school where you had the upper echelon of privileged society on either side. And proud I'm a model of my high school. But yeah. So she was experienced to a lot of things. And she would literally be invited to all these parties, and everybody of every race, color, be like, hey, Mila, you want to come out to the party? Mila, you want to come out, da da da. And literally at some point, our house became the spot where all the kids
some friends was white. She had blacks too, black and white.
And Harry seen all this. Where our house became the hangout spot. Where they were like, okay, let's go to me, my daughter's house, and hang out and whatever, or they would take out somewhere else. And then being teenagers, doing teenage stuff, illegal drinking and stuff like that. You know how teenagers do. They do it. I mean, let's not be blind to the fact. They be like, oh my God, I'm messed up. I can't make it home or whatever. What they do? Crash at the house. They crash at the house and be like, okay, you know what? We get it. We understand. And we would call their parents and be like, hey, such and such is over here. They might have, whatever. Just being responsible adults, looking out for the kids and everything and all that. But yeah, I'm kind of getting off on a whole nother tangent. But anyway,
let's let Tom finish this up. And I agree as far as Rogan go. Now, as far as the way I look at it, I'll never listen to anything from him again. I mean, I will say that it's something about once I hear something, and sometimes I investigate it and sometimes I won't. But as far as him being able to exist, I have no problem with that. But will I ever get involved with that and listen to him again? No. So that's how I play things like that. Anytime I hear somebody, because I'm always going to be skeptical of that person. So
and that makes sense. That's the great thing about the radio.
Yeah.
Change the dial. That's the great thing about like
Or turn it
podcasting,
off.
videos,
Yeah.
shows, turn them off. Yeah,
That's right.
it's a great thing about it. I turned off the news when I left the federal government because I hated it. I was
Right.
I was a DOD employee for a couple of years in Virginia, and by the time I left there, between the news and what I saw in real life, my brain was fried, and I was like, I need to unplug and decompress. And I came down here, and I love life here. Life is good here.
Well,
Things are easy here.
you got to think too, Ron. You know, another thing too, what you actually saw versus what you were hearing. They didn't.
No,
they
weren't.
They didn't mesh. You know, so they were all over the place, and that's what any job. You know, your boss can say one thing versus what's actually being done. You're like, wait a minute, but what we're doing versus what you're saying, what? You know, so I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
All right.
But anyway, yeah, back to the standard topic at hand.
Yes, yes.
I mean,
back to headlocks and arm bars, shall we?
Yeah. So
Everybody getting kicked in the stomach, forearm to the chest.
somebody earlier mentioned Chris Jericho was in the mid card. Was that?
That was Luke.
That was Luke. Okay, so
Yeah.
Luke brought up Chris Jericho in the mid card, and my thing is, and I say this a lot. You know, Tom, you brought up, you know, Roman. They've invested all their money in Roman Reigns, or they've invested all their time in Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar or what have you. You know, these two guys get hurt. You're not deep in the bullpen here. You don't have too many to rely on at that upper level. So the question for AEW in that light would be, who is, you know, if you were driving down the road, I've said this a million times, you're driving down I-85 and you see a name on a marquee light. You remember stadiums back in the day, and you pick it. Oh man, Travis Tritt's coming to the center. I gotta go. Or you know, Garth or whoever. In AEW, we know CM Punk's a draw. He's probably their biggest draw at this time. He's one of their most popular names. Highest selling T-shirt in 24 hours, and he broke the record.
Yeah,
be realistic.
I'm guilty. I have one.
I don't from this run. I do from like 14. You remember when Vicky Guerrero got thrown into the mud pool? Yeah, she got fired by Stephanie McMahon. It's the last televised wrestling show I went to.
Oh wow,
that long ago. I haven't been to one since. My wife and I went I've also got 2 kids now, so it's really hard to do stuff like that, and it's quite expensive. But at any rate, we love the indie scene. I take the kids there, and they meet and hang out with everybody. You two, I know you guys are gonna pick at my kids when you see them because of earlier and whenever you talk to them, Harry. But Tom, let's start with Tom. Who do you think is AEW's premier drawing talent these days? Who will make you stop and buy a ticket, which is going to sell out arenas? Let's talking about selling out arenas.
But I'm a hardcore fan. I think Punk said it best when he said, we no longer have casual fans. This business is not about casual fans. And it's a romantic notion that someone's got a remote and there's Sting, let's watch. I don't think that's happening. I think $1 million is where they are right now, or just under $1 million. I'd love to see them get 2 or 3 million, sure. But you got to think about how many people are actually watching this stuff on a full-time, regular basis. We're down to the hardcore audience. The die-hard hardcore audience have been watching for 20 plus years. That's who we're down to. Now, you would think if our kids are along for the ride and their friends because of them, and then boom, the next generation, that's not materializing yet. So for me personally, it wouldn't take much. I've been to a few AEW shows. We were all out in Chicago last year and got to see Punk, and we were blown away. We figured Danielson might be there. We didn't expect Cole as well. Like, I was hoarse at the end of the night. I mean, it was awesome. But for me personally, it doesn't take much to get me to the show. Now, if you're asking what's a mainstream viewer going to get, I think Sting looks great on the marquee, obviously. Punk, yes. Jericho, obviously. Cody Rhodes. God, there's so many guys to choose from. I just think they're in a great spot talent-wise. And I get the argument that there's too many. And the idea that Jericho's in the mid-card, if Chris Jericho doesn't want to be in the mid-card, he won't be in the mid-card. I would
agree.
think Jericho at this point in his career is probably pretty okay with mid-card. I mean, is he there to have a phenomenal world title run? I don't think so, in my opinion. I think he's there to – how many times has Chris Jericho walked by someone in that locker room and said, hey, tonight, when you do the armbar, how about you rotate to your left instead of your right next time? That guy may take that, and it's his new finisher. And because Jericho took 3 seconds out of his night to say something. I mean, Khan has done a great job, in my opinion, of getting veterans in the locker room who will pass on their knowledge, which is what the business is about. What was it Heyman said about Terry Funk years ago? Funk looked at the ECW locker room and said, I can make him, I can make him, I can make him. Because Terry wasn't selfish. He didn't want to hang on to his knowledge and die with it. His idea was, I want to help the next generation, or I've got no one to hand the business off to. So in my head, that's where Jericho is. That's where maybe Punk is getting to. Hey, let's help these guys get better. So I can absolutely see Jungle Boy versus MJF for the AW World title in the next 2 to 3 years. Absolutely. And Darby's up there. Sammy Guevara's up there. Hopefully Scorpio Sky is up there. I mean, I think they're building blocks, and they talk about the 4 pillars. That's the real deal. I think that they are in phenomenal shape for the future. We can talk all day about, are there too many pieces right now? Where they hit a breaking point? Maybe. But those younger cats are sitting back watching all this, watching through the curtain, watching on the monitors backstage and soaking it up because they want to get better. I think they're in a great spot, personally.
Yeah. I'm inclined to agree with that too. They have a lot of useful talent on the roster. I'm gonna say that Jericho's in the twilight of his career, but I think he may do the Sting thing and just hang around to help guide younger talent. Now, I have a standing bet that is now increased to it's an individual bet with 2 different individuals. Number 1 is Chris Burton. And then over the weekend during my interview with Brino Royce, he said, I'm going to have to get in on that. What we did was we bet a cigar. I do partake in cigars, as does Mr. Burton, and as does Brino Royce. We do enjoy the nice cigar on occasion. Now, I don't know what all you know about it or whatever. Cigars can be quite expensive. So
yes.
The bet is this. I bet that Eddie Kingston will hold the AEW world title inside of 2 years as of January. Now, I say that as I'm looking backwards, hindsight is 2020. I went all the way back in my brain and I said, you know who this feels like is the feel-good story, and finally he got his moment with Mick Foley when he won the WWF title. I feel like that's the similar trajectory that they're going to run with Eddie Kingston to culminate him winning one. Now, I also said I believe it's going to be from Jericho. I think Jericho's going to get the first time ever 2-time AEW champion, as well as Jericho is going to help bring their ratings. You said they were under 1 million. I think Jericho could put it up 1.3, 1.5, if not higher to 1.8 as world champion, because he was all right. Think about the bubbly, how huge that was. That became immortalized as a meme, right? Then, the going out to eat with the belt on the table and everything else he did. He Ric Flaired it to me. He hit a home run with their world title. I thought it was it was the right call to put the belt on Jericho to come out the gate with. For him to lose it to Moxley worked out very well because him and Moxley had great matches in the E. There's no denying that. Even with the plant, that was still funny. And I remember the plant. You remember the pot busting over his head? It was
Brutal.
funny. But
That was here.
it was-
That was here in Greenville.
but it was funny and it fit and it worked. So it just yet again, funny, fit, worked. Fit, worked. That's what I'm seeing for Eddie Kingston to earn that world title in the next 2 years is because look at what's come out on social media about Eddie Kingston in the last 6 to 8 months. Battling depression and trying to quit smoking and all these other anxiety. And I was a working class guy. I was poor. I was broke. I was getting ready to be homeless and move in with my parents when I got the phone call for AEW. Those are all identifiable and tangible things from our real life. I could feel that when he was saying those things. I could feel it because guess what, gentlemen? I'm 500 miles away from home and I don't have a safety net. You see what I'm saying? So think about Eddie Kingston. He just latched out and grabbed everybody right in the chest. He wrapped his hand around your heart, and his hand is there, and you can feel him just as much as he can feel you. And I'm telling you, that's where I believe it is. I believe it's Eddie Kingston, and in the next 2 years, you mentioned Darby and MJF and Sammy Guevara, and I believe you mentioned Jungle Boy, didn't you? I think you said Jungle Boy. I could see them in the next 3 to 5 being in that world title contingency. The only way I see MJF getting there any faster than 3 to 5 years is if CM Punk is the world champion and he takes it off of Punk. That I can see. But
Unless they revisit MJF and Jericho.
Eddie Kingston is going to be, in 2 years, he's going to be where he's at. He's going to be where he's at right now, anywhere from 2 to 6 in the roster. I don't see him being a world champion over at AEW. And Tom, I've heard what he said. I mean, he probably meant to mention MJF, but he really didn't. When you were saying as far as going down, he did? Okay.
He
as
said
far
MJF and Jungle Boy fighting for the world title in 2 years.
Oh, yeah, he did say that. I'm sorry about that, Tom. But yes, as far as when you were saying going down the road and on the billboard, who will make me come to see him? MJF is definitely the person that I would love to come see. But if, in my opinion, within the next 6 months to a year, their biggest draws are MJF, and even though I don't want him to be, it's MJF and Hook. That's their biggest draws.
Oh God, dude!
As far as it is. As far as in AEW, that's their biggest draws. But as far as Jericho getting the title back, unless Jericho dedicates himself to his body, gets himself back in great shape, and it's not that he can't do exactly, because he can. He can perform exactly. He can perform almost to the point where he performed before. But unless he dedicates himself to getting his body into the shape that people are going to respect, I don't see him. I do not see him. Even if they give him the world championship, I don't see him getting the numbers up to 1.5, 1.8. Because if you go back to the beginning of the first rating that they had, their debut, they haven't been able to beat that rating. And not saying anything about AEW. I mean, that's great. Tom travels, and a lot of people travel to go to see them in different spots. But as far as AEW go, MJF, if you look, and I look at some of the ratings, and I look at the breakdowns of the ratings hour by hour, and every time MJF has come to speak, the ratings have went up. Like they'll get 50,000 more viewers. It's like people are calling MJ is coming up. Now MJF, the only time that his numbers went down within the last year when he was on air is that match that he had against CM Punk. I don't know why the numbers fell down, but they actually lost viewers. They lost viewers when what was that guy? Dan Lambert was talking to Brandy. They lost a lot of viewers. They lost like 80,000, I think, on that. But they lost viewers during that CM Punk match with MJF. I don't know why, but they did lose viewers. But yes, I've been looking at that as far as their ratings go and breaking it down from the each quarter or whatever how they do it. But I've been following a guy who actually breaks that down, and I actually pulled those up and looked at it too. So MJF, every time he gets out there, come out and talk, he raised the ratings up. And I guess you can look at somebody.
Oh, we lost him.
His internet went completely out on that one.
Yeah, well, he has satellite, so yeah, yeah.
Do I need to do a favor? Do I need to try to find something for him?
I don't know if you can because he lives out in the middle of nowhere. So yeah.
I can go knock on a couple of office doors right next door to mine, but we'll keep that for off air. Anyway,
Okay.
but anyway, so Tom, what are your thoughts there?
I'm going to bail here shortly, guys. It's been a pleasure. I think, look, the AEW discussion is a multifaceted discussion because everybody's got a take, and that's perfectly fine because we're all fans and we all know what we like and what we don't like, that kind of
Yes.
thing. We need AEW to succeed just as badly as we need Impact to succeed, Ring of Honor to come back NWA, for Billy Corgan to finally spend some cash and get this thing on a network somewhere.
Oh God, yes.
I'm just saying, let's start rolling the dice here. But
Gary
in my
was supposed
opinion,
to be here.
I mean, let's get this thing rolling because it's, and the big company can say that no one else is competition. We all know that's nonsense. That is absurd.
Yeah.
And no matter what they say, it doesn't matter what they say. But we need this business to prosper. I would like for this business to be around and outlive me. Okay. And I plan on being here a long time. So I don't want to see it go away. And I think it's a niche entertainment that has received a black eye and deservedly so over the years. Let's face it. But I want to see this thing exist for a good long time. And the only way to guarantee that is if for more than one company to make money and be financially lucrative at this. That's the only way to ensure this thing stays around. So I wish AEW all the success in the world. Maybe one day I'll grow to hate it and despise it. I don't know. But right now I'm a fan of it because I personally like what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Now I will agree with Tom. This business has, over the years had its ups and downs. In some point more downs than ups. And competition is good for business. You got one thing that you definitely said, Tom, that I agree with you 1,000,000,000,000,000%. NWA needs to be on TV somewhere. They need to be. They got to be. I mean, it's not like Corgan doesn't have the connections, the people that can make this thing happen. Because my God, you've been in the entertainment business well over 25, 30 years. So you've met somebody that knows somebody or something. And we've seen NWA. NWA has a damn good product. They need to get out the kiddie pool. They need to get out the kiddie pool. That's the best way I can say it.
and honestly, Corrigan believes that what Khan is doing is not sustainable. He said that in interviews. He said, I don't believe network deals are sustainable because there's too many ups and downs, too many valleys. At the end of the day, he may be right. But right now, I'm sitting back going, I enjoy YouTube. I like YouTube. I want you to do more than YouTube. I want to see them hit the road and travel. And,
dude,
I don't know.
Man, because, okay, like you said, everybody doesn't have, believe it or not, everybody doesn't have cell phones. Everybody doesn't have internet access. So so you're missing out on that part of the audience that could help generate money. And yes, what he said, it may not be sustainable, but that's business. You're not going to work in the black all year long, your physical year. It's not going to happen. Anybody that knows just the bare basics of business, it's not going to happen. You're going to have your peaks, you're going to have your valleys. But, that's here nor there. But, yeah, NWA, man, they've got a talent roster, and they've got people that, unless you truly follow NWA, you'd be like, wow, they were over there? Where have they been? I've never seen this person wrestle before. And, you'd be like, oh, yeah, they're in NWA. What? Oh my God, so they just need to get out the kiddie pool, man. I mean, take a step out on faith.
Yep.
What do you got to lose?
Okay. Now as far as well, I don't understand them not being on TV either. I do think they need to be on TV. What did you say, Tom? That Billy Corgan said he don't believe TV deals are sustainable.
He said in today, and I'm just paraphrasing, but today's climate and network TV, it's not sustainable in the long run. And maybe this guy is smarter than I am. I'm sure he is, and he sees something I don't. But in my opinion, if you want to be a player, you got to be playing with the other guys.
Yeah. As far as now, as far as AEW's TV deal, now I know they need it. Of course, they need it. But as far as their TV deal, I heard the top 14 wrestlers that they have. Now I've heard this from some great sources. The top 14 people that they have and I looked at their TV deal. The top 14 takes up. They make the money of that TV deal. That TV deal with TNT, TBS, the top 14 people takes that off the top. So, and as far as and if you look at what they're making, I know they generated last year of 2021, they generated 2.4 million on YouTube. And I forgot how I'm not exactly sure what they generated as far as from the TV deal, but I know it wasn't enough to cover. It wasn't enough to cover as far as their roster go. And then you have to throw in what they're making in the arenas and all that. And then remember, they do have 4 pay-per-views during the year. And I haven't seen exactly what they're making during the pay-per-views. But Tony Khan did say this. Tony Khan said, I'm about to break even. He said that to a Wrestling Insider.
Which is awesome. They've only been around for 2 years. That's amazing.
Yeah, we're coming up on third year.
It's 3 years. Yeah, 3 years now. Okay, but 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, he said we're about to break even. So, that's good. If he broke even at the end of 2021, that's a good thing. Yeah. But as far as making
from going from not even being a company to, and they're not competing against WWE in no way, shape, or form, but be breaking even in 3 years, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's great. If he breaks even this year, that is great.
Yeah. But Scott, welcome back. Too bad this is the closest segment.
I'm sorry I had to get out and come back, but
that's okay.
A family thing that happened, and I had to really take care of it. It was important. But I want to take one moment, because when I left the conversation, we were talking about the match with CM Punk and that. I want to throw another match out there that really got me invested and really made me cry. Do you guys remember when Dusty and Dustin had their match at AEW? Dustin Rhodes.
Yeah,
when they had that match, brother versus brother, and at the end they cried and they hugged it out. Man, I was in tears.
Yeah.
I got so invested in that match. I was in tears at the end of that. And I know it was all just, for show, and it was all a storyline, but I got so invested, man. And the ring psychology, I mean, they looked like they really hated each other. Dustin, who plays Gold Dust, I know him mostly as Gold Dust. He was bleeding during the match. I mean, he had him bloody and the whole 9 yards. And dude, that was one match that just got me involved. And I had to, as far as ring psychology, that was my favorite in the modern time for AEW.
Now, Ron, just to touch on something, when you talk about a match that had me in tears, I am not gonna lie. When I think about the ending of this match, it tore me up. Rock and Hogan, WrestleMania in the Skydome.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, two big guys.
That was a moment. That was a moment.
I love the CM Punk and CM Punk and MJF match. I just hated the ending. I wish they would have had a 45-minute clinic and somebody, whether CM Punk lost or not, I didn't like the interference. I just wanted it to end them two. I understand why, but I understand why they did it, to keep a storyline going and bring back some old stuff. I get it, but I just wanted them two to end it and make it a memorable match. And now they'll always be, well, did he really win because it was an interference and blah, blah, blah. And
that's good. That's good. MJF's got no business pinning anyone on this planet cleanly. He should never. I don't care what it is, who it is. I don't care, because the guy, every time he cheats, you hate him just a little bit more, and the crowd's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that happened."
Right.
It just adds to his character. I love it so much.
I'm one of them. I'm
disagreeing with
though. I'm a historian. I like, going back and saying, man, do you remember when these two guys locked it up, and they locked it up for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and you could talk about that match. And then for this match, there's always going to be the stigma. Well, at the end.
But what have we been talking about for 45 minutes?
I'm sorry. I wasn't here for that.
I'm just saying.
I apologize.
We're talking about it, so it did its job.
Yeah,
exactly. Now, as far as what Tom is saying, I go back.
I must have missed a really good conversation. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that.
I go back now. This is when I really got into wrestling, because Ric Flair came back when I was from the plane crash, because I was watching it before that, but I was barely watching it, not paying a lot of attention to it. When he came back from the plane crash, George Scott had changed his gimmick, and he became Nature Boy Ric Flair. He changed the gimmick. Ric Flair was 25 years old, just like MJF is now.
Yep.
And everybody felt the same way Tom feels now about MJF. He should never pin anybody cleanly. And that's the way they felt about Ric Flair. Even though he pinned some people cleanly, every time he got in the ring, everybody said it don't matter if he wins or lose. Even if he won clean, he cheats every time. So that same scenario is rolling with what's going on with MJF right now. So that's pretty great, man. That's pretty awesome.
And what I think is awesome is, we talk about his age. He's 25, 24, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The mic skills that dude possesses is unreal. I mean, he could put a crowd. He goes and does his homework before he comes in. And I know they do mostly major cities, but there's times when they do the not so big cities, like Spartanburg. I'll use an example like Spartanburg. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But he'll read up on Spartanburg and the news that's going on, and he'll come in there and he'll say something that will make everybody upset.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It'll make you hate it immediately. And that's what I've always loved about him. And I'm a heel guy myself. I root for the good guys because that's what I should do. But if there's a good heel that makes, people hate him, hey, I'm all for it. I won't admit it. Nine times out of 10, I won't admit it. But, like the Unbookables at HWA.
Yeah, I'm about to say you lost that bet. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's my Unbookables poster right there. See?
Right. All right. Well, guys, look, we went way over what we planned to go on. This Broadway did not end. And you know what? We're going to keep the chat alive. And when things come back up and we recircle this, we'll come back and do it again. We may have to pick a different night where everybody ain't working the next day or what have you.
Right.
But I hope everybody enjoyed the conversation out there as much as I've enjoyed it in here. And I hope you gentlemen that all chimed in. Thank y'all. Everybody put in just great work on, the comments and the feedback and the building blocks. You spoke of building blocks at AEW, the building pieces. Think about the conversation and the way it just built, organically amongst us.
Right.
It works.
And I like, because we have 5, we had 6, we could have had like 8 or 9. I think a few of them that couldn't make it, but all of us are we love indie pro wrestling, but we all look at it from a different angle. You could pick up something, and we all look at it from a different angle, and that's what's cool.
Yeah,
it's been a great night. So here's how we're gonna send this out. Mr. Clark, you go first. I want everybody's social medias and all that, whatever shows you've got, let's plug them all. And for everybody who, wasn't here or left early, I'll make sure we get them out too.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Tom Clark's Main Event, almost every Friday on Wrestling Rumors Facebook page. And I broadcast my Facebook page at the same time as well. And then it's all pro wrestling, been going since 2014. The second pod is Tom Clark's 6M podcast, because I'm all about the branding, kids. So 6M podcast, which is movies, music, Marvel, magazines, miniseries, and more. which is geek culture / pop culture. And we cover everything under the sun. It's usually me and a guest co-host. And this past week, in fact, today's brand new episode was Batman. Last week was John Cena. The week before was iRobot. The week before that was MC Hammer. So, like, we cover everything you could possibly imagine from all
Chris
walks
loved
of
that
life.
MC Hammer.
But yeah, I was a hammerhead, boy. I
Big
had,
hammer.
Like,
You got to
I had,
listen to
like,
that show, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, I had like 6 hammer outfits. So yeah, I was all about hammer, man.
Very underrated. That last album that flopped, the
number 5,
Funky
The
Headhunter.
Funky Headhunter.
oh, Funky Headhunter, yeah.
Dude, Don't Stop is an underrated track. I'm on the record. Underrated track.
See,
I'm
The
just
whole
saying.
album, the album was underrated. The album
I
was
think so too.
It was
Hey,
really-
hey,
it was really
Tom,
good.
That's what I thought we was just gonna say our stuff and move on, right?
Right? I had to go stir it up.
Hey,
Forever.
hey, but Tom, hey, since you were talking about hammer, go look up his 5th album, that gospel album he did that really was not pushed that hard. That was a good album too.
That was on his record label, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
All right.
Anyway, that's me.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. Burton.
All right. Christopher Burton, the People's Podcaster. You can find me on Facebook under just plain Christopher Burton. And you can find me on, like I said before when I came on, the hottest podcast this side of the Mississippi, the Straight Up Wrestling Show with my man HBT, Harry Bernard Taylor. And you can also find me on Twitter under a whole different handle. Now, listen to me when I say this. The capital letter U, the word hate, the number 2, like me. You hate to like me. That is my Twitter. Come follow me. Yes, it is an oxymoron, and I thought of that myself as original. Yes, so follow me, and I will respond back. But yes, you can find me on those platforms.
All right.
PT.
All right.
Go ahead, PT. I'll be last.
Harry
I
Bernard
ain't
Taylor.
going.
You can find me on Facebook, Harry Bernard Taylor, and with my man Christopher Burton on the Straight Up Wrestling Show on Facebook or on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter at just flat out Harry Taylor on Twitter, and you can find me on YouTube, God and Grace Ministries. Harry Bernard Taylor on God and Grace Ministries. You can find me there, and you might be seeing. I mean, we were on Twitter. We'll be back on Twitter, and we'll be on Twitch soon. So check it out. And Chris and I, like we said before, will be down on your spot, at your spot, Scott Larson. We'll
HWA.
HWA.
Yeah, we'll be out there at the bunkhouse.
This weekend. William Rollins has a show, his wrestling show, February 18th. And the 12th, I think we have, let's see, not the 12th, we have, what is CMW coming
Yes,
up?
on the
CMW
18th
coming up
also.
On Friday, I think it's on the 12th or the 13th. I'm not sure. But
Yeah,
I
one
think
of
it's
them,
12th.
yeah.
But
They're both on the 18th.
besides all that, I'm done. Scott?
Cool. I've got 2 shows, hashtag Truth, which you can find on my personal page right here, Scott Larson, or hashtag Truth Wrestling Podcast on YouTube. And I also do a show with my partner. It's called Slapdown Digicast. You can find it on my page. I produce it right off of my page.
Okay.
So, and also I just have to say I am a big, huge fan of 6M. I do listen. I do watch it. Very much so. These guys know I watch their shows religiously, but I just want to tell you, Tom, I do watch 6M. And one of my favorite podcasts that you ever did, Tom Clark, was, I believe it was on your regular wrestling podcast. You did one on the NWO and all the information about NWO, and I thought that was a terrific podcast. If you love the NWO as much as I did back in the day, you got to go listen to that podcast. I am definitely going to tell you that. So
that was episode 1 of the 6M. That was the first episode.
Episode 1 of the 6M. That was phenomenal.
The first episode was supposed to have been Metallica, and I go listen to the playback, and I'm at the end of a cul-de-sac, and I've tried to soundproof the window, and I have a bird that one day I will take its life. Okay, but during the Metallica episode, this bird was relentless. So I go back and I go listen to the audio, and I tell my co-host, dude, I can't clean it up. I can't filter it out.
Right.
So we
That's
put the
because
NWO
Metallica
episode
was
on first, and it
relentless.
worked out fine.
He just wanted to be the third guest. He wanted to be the third one in the booth with you.
There you
man.
go.
That's
All right,
why you take the bird feeder and move it to the other side of the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that metal from Metallica, that was relentless. So that bird was relentless too. So
Yes.
you knew what was going
Yes.
on.
But so for everybody here, I am Ron Emerson. They call me the Saint of TRWC. You can catch The Real Wrestling Community on the Real Wrestling Community Facebook and The Real Wrestling Community Attitude, which is a whole separate page where the cuffs are taken off of things. In other words, if you're into some more adult-oriented jokes and things of that nature, Attitude is way your alley. But on The Real Wrestling Community, I go live every single Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do fan interactions. These guys pop in and talk. Occasionally, we bring them on live, but predominantly, I interview just whoever in the blue hell wants to come on and talk wrestling, because
There you go.
this is kind of what I like to do. I started off doing this like a year or so ago in the backyard, predominantly drinking beer, cooking food, and talking wrestling. So by the time I went in the house, I was pretty hammered, but I made good food, so it worked. But at any rate, now I don't drink, but every now and then. I had one to christen this show off tonight just because.
Well, I was on my Stone Cold, so I had 3.
There you go. But you can catch me, Ron Emerson, on Facebook. You can catch me on The Saint on Facebook. I'm also a professional wrestling ring announcer here in the Carolinas. And then TRWC, you can find me there. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Twitch. I'm on YouTube. And pretty much The Saint, and look for the goofy mug. You'll find me. I go by The Saint on pretty much everything. This thing's on 6 platforms right here, right now. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. Luke, I know you left us earlier, but brother, thank you for being here. To those who couldn't make it tonight, Sarah, Tina, Stravy, and Gary Horn from the NWA. Guys, y'all want to talk NWA? We need to kind of pop, nudge, try to get him on here. Definitely. So that way, hey, he may have Billy's ear.
That's right down your alley, man.
Definitely. Yeah. Before we go, Tom, I know you're High Velocity Wrestling. When are they going to have their next show?
It's Saturday, June 18th.
There you go.
And Tom, I just shot you a friend request too. I just shot you a friend request, buddy.
Awesome.
Yes. Be looking out for that. Great show up there. And I'll tell you what, if you ever want to see the best indie, and I will say it, you ever want to see the best indie place for a wrestler to come out, go to High Velocity. Man, just the curtain where the wrestlers come out. They got this big painted. Oh, it's beautiful, dude. I mean, it's the best entranceway I've ever seen at an independent wrestling. And I've said it 50 times, and I'll say it 51 right now. You got to check just for that. Pay the $10 to go see the wrestling show, but I guarantee you $9.99 of it will be just to see the opening.
Right. Be sure you send me match cards, flyers, whatever. If you want to do an interview, and we'll sit back, talk wrestling. We'll talk about the card, whatever you want to do. We can do that live on air. If you want, it's entirely up to you. But if whatever information you get, if I see it on Facebook, we predominantly just share it, all of us. So that's kind of our thing. We build our own community. That's it, especially here in the Indies. But gentlemen,
sounds good.
It's been real. It's been fun, and hell, it's been real fun. Thank you all for coming tonight. Everybody out there in entertainment broadband land, thank you for tuning in. This has been the Round Table Rumble,
episode uno.
The one.
And that's the hashtag truth. Put it in there. Had to throw it in there.
It's all
Right.
Stay straight up.
That's right.
Right.